Chapter 1762, Terrifying Fiend Technique. Chapter 1762, Terrifying Fiend Technique. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor destroyed Monk Daming's body and trapped his essence spirit in the ancient coffin, even leaving behind a Mingwang prayer bead. Back when he gathered that information, Su Zimo could not understand. Why did the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor spend so much effort to set up such a trap? It was only when the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor recounted the situation of the battle 40,000 years ago that Su Zimo understood. Although the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor won, he was indignant. He wanted to fight Monk Daming. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor left a chance of survival on purpose. If Monk Daming wanted to leave alive, he would only have a chance if he cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. The titular disciple of the Buddhist monasteries, Monk Daming, who had the compassion to save the masses, fell into the Fiend Tao and cultivated a fiend technique, becoming the fiend he wanted to suppress in the past. The moment Monk Daming broke free, he had already lost. Actually, the fight between the two of them did not stop at all. Instead, it lasted for 40,000 years. Su Zimo sighed emotionally. Although Monk Daming lost, Su Zimo was still filled with admiration for him. 40,000 years of struggle. It was dark in that cramped ancient coffin. There was no sound, no life and nothing but a lonely essence spirit. Su Zimo did not dare to imagine how Monk Daming managed to survive the past 40,000 years. Su Zimo believed that he had a strong will and an unshakable Tao heart. However, he believed that he would not be able to last 40,000 years if he was in the same position. "You're truly amazing." The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor looked at Monk Daming and lamented as well. "Back then, I was truly worried that you would waste your time until your essence spirit withered and you died in the ancient coffin. Finally, Fufu. You finally escaped." The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could not help but laugh without concealing the joy and excitement in his heart. "The fact that you're free means that I've won. Furthermore, you'll never be able to turn the tides this time round. Indeed, I lost after 40,000 years of fighting." Monk Daming looked at his hands. "All these years, in order to increase my strength, I cultivated the fiend technique and my hands have been stained with endless blood. I'm no longer worthy of the title of Daming." Su Zimo sighed internally. This was also the reason why Monk Daming gave him the complete Mingwang prayer beads after knowing his identity. Although Monk Daming broke free, he felt guilty and could not face his old friends. In fact, he even wore his long hair to cover his face. Monk Daming must have endured immense pain and suffering all these years. After a moment of silence, Monk Daming said, "I've lost completely in the battle for the past 40,000 years. However, the battle between us is not over yet. I've returned this time round to make a final conclusion." Ha ha ha. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could not help but burst into laughter. "Daming, don't harbor any hopes. You know very well that since you've cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, you'll never be able to defeat me." Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Why could one never win the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor after cultivating the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra? The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor said, "Daming, I've just said that you're the only one worthy of being my opponent in this generation. If possible, I don't want to refine you into my third clone either. As long as you choose to submit to me today, I'm willing to share this world with you. From this day forth, you, Daming, can stand shoulder to shoulder with me in Tianhuang mainland. Your status will be above the emperors and you will rule over Tianhuang mainland with the 10,000 races under your feet." The emperors were shocked. Everyone could tell how much the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor valued Monk Daming. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could even give up on condensing a third clone to give Monk Daming a chance to be on par with him. After Monk Daming appeared, there was no one else in the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's eyes. To be precise, in the eyes of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, everyone else, even Su Zimo, were his blood slaves. Only Monk Daming was qualified to be on par with him. Suddenly, a terrifying guess crossed Su Zimo's mind as he asked, "Blood Fiend, why did you save me twice back in the 1000-year Blood Sea and East Sea?" In the 1000-year Blood Sea, it was the clone of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, the Tao Wu Demon Emperor, that released the blood-colored bubbles to save Su Zimo. Above the East Sea, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor transformed into Hermit and saved him from the hands of the Golden Crow Patriarch. He. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor laughed. "Desolate Marshal, haven't you realized yet? Even you will just merely be a blood slave of mine. Among the many blood slaves, you're the most outstanding and have the greatest potential. How can I bear to see you die?" The emperors were alarmed and turned to look. Even the Martial Emperor would only be a blood slave of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. That information was way too terrifying. Monk Daming turned to Su Zimo. The reason why the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is so powerful is not only because it can refine bloodlines limitlessly. More than that, it's because those who cultivate this fiend technique will not be able to break free from the control of Blood Fiend. Su Zimo had only cultivated a small portion of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra on the ancient coffin. Therefore, he could not see through the essence of the fiend technique. However, after releasing the fiend technique a few times, he could vaguely sense that there was something extremely terrifying behind it. Therefore, after the battle at the 1000-year Blood Sea, he did not release the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra no matter how dangerous it was. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, "In that case, the deeper you cultivate this fiend technique, the harder it will be for you to break free." "That's right." Monk Daming nodded. "That's why I wanted to kill you on 6 Stars Mountain back then. It was because you cultivated this fiend technique and were already considered his blood slave. I didn't want you to become stronger, that's why I wanted to kill you. However, even till the end, you did not use the fiend technique. That was why I did not kill you either." Monk Daming continued, "The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra that the two of us cultivated was left behind by Blood Fiend, so it has the smallest flaws. However, he left a lot of flaws in the fiend technique cultivated by the others. Therefore, when the same fiend technique is released, it's difficult for the others to affect us." Suddenly, Su Zimo was enlightened. He suddenly understood many things. It was no wonder why Monk Daming stopped Heavenly Secrets and Purple Flame from refining their bloodlines in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. Du's blood tribute could not affect Monk Daming either. On the contrary, Monk Daming could refine it with ease. Simply put, although they were all cultivating the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, the two of them cultivated a more complete and top-tier fiend technique, the others were using an inferior version. "That's right." The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor looked at Su Zimo and said proudly, "Desolate Marshal, from now on, you'll be the highest level blood slave under me. You will only be beneath me and Daming." By saying that, it was as though the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor had bestowed a great gift upon Su Zimo. Chapter 1763, Blood Fiend's Miscalculation. Chapter 1763, Blood Fiend's Miscalculation. "Blood Fiend, aren't you way too confident?" Su Zimo sneered, "I've only cultivated a few sections of your Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and released it a few times. Do you think you can control me with that? Additionally, even if you can control it, you'll only be able to control my Dragon Phoenix true body at most. This Green Lotus true body of mine was created by the creation Green Lotus and has nothing to do with the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra." After reconstructing his Green Lotus true body, Su Zimo had never released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. The one who truly released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was his original body, the current Dragon Phoenix true body. Fufufu. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor grinned and shook his head. "Desolate Marshal, you're way too naive. Do you think that the fiend technique I created is only related to my body and bloodline? As long as you cultivate it, this fiend technique will haunt you forever, including your essence spirit. Before his sentence was finished, his eyes lit up with a strange blood glint. Ugh! Su Zimo grunted dully and his expression changed. Blood-colored chains appeared on the dragon phoenix true body and coiled around his body tightly. No matter how the dragon phoenix true body channeled his blood chi, he could not take on the form of a taboo and break free from the scarlet chain. In the consciousness of the green lotus true body, blood-colored threads appeared on the black-haired essence spirit on the creation lotus platform as well. The blood-colored threads emitted an extremely evil power and were extremely sharp, gripping the green lotus essence spirit tightly. Su Zimo's expression turned extremely terrible. To think that this fiend technique would be so terrifying. Even though his essence spirit was split into two and he cultivated two true bodies, he could not break free from the influence of this fiend technique. Although the green lotus true body was reconstructed without any impurities and had nothing to do with the blood refinement fiend Sutra, his green lotus essence spirit was already tainted by that evil power when he cultivated and released the fiend technique. The blood refinement fiend emperor surveyed his surroundings and looked at the other emperors proudly. Why aren't you guys submitting? Even your martial emperor is only my blood slave right now. Many emperors had pale expressions of despair. Even the storyteller's eyes dimmed. Their only hope was the martial emperor. But now that the martial emperor was under the control of the blood refinement fiend emperor, no one in Tianhuang mainland could match him. Are you still struggling? The blood refinement fiend emperor looked at Su Zimo's two true bodies and said coldly, "Kneel." The blood refinement fiend emperor's eyes shone with a scarlet glint. The blood-colored chains on the dragon phoenix true body tightened. They emitted an extremely strange power and began to absorb the bloodline of the dragon phoenix true body to refine it. A powerful will descended in the consciousness of the dragon phoenix true body. Under the envelopment of that will, the dragon phoenix essence spirit felt a tremendous pressure and its consciousness turned blurry. Roar! The dragon phoenix true body growled. Scarlet dragon scales appeared on his body one after another, burning with raging flames as he fought against the blood-colored chains. The two different forces devoured one another mutually. At the same time, the essence spirit of the dragon phoenix true body fought against the will and refused to back down. The green lotus true body was in the same situation. An extremely powerful will wanted to suppress the green lotus essence spirit and control it. He had not expected Su Zimo's will to be so strong that it could form a stalemate with him. When Monk Daming saw that, he smiled gently. Blood fiend, you miscalculated. Even if you schemed for 40,000 years and racked your brains, you did not expect that the martial emperor would be able to enter a stalemate with you because of his lack of fiendish tendencies and strong Dao heart. Humph. The blood refinement fiend emperor sneered indifferently, this is nothing. The current situation is still under my control. Although I haven't controlled Desolate Marshal completely, his two true bodies can't even fend for themselves right now and have no combat strength. I can destroy him at any moment. Everyone could tell that the blood refinement fiend emperor was not lying. Right now, Su Zimo's two true bodies were restrained by the blood refinement fiend Sutra. Although they did not fall completely, it was extremely difficult for them to resist. Notwithstanding the blood refinement fiend emperor, any emperor would be able to kill Su Zimo with ease. The blood refinement fiend emperor looked at Monk Daming and continued, it's not impossible if I want to control Desolate Marshal completely. As long as I refine you and perfect my fiend technique, I'll be able to control him with ease. Monk Daming shook his head. Wrong again. This is your second miscalculation. I've already said that the fight between us is not over. The reason why I'm back is to end it with you. The blood refinement fiend emperor sneered, Daming, you're different from Desolate Marshal. Over the years, you've been deeply fiendish. You know very well how many bloodlines you refined in this battle of the 10,000 races. If I want to refine you into my third clone, you won't be able to resist at all. Monk Daming said, Blood Fiend, do you know why I cultivated the Fiend technique and came out of the ancient coffin? The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor frowned slightly. I didn't do it because I wanted to survive. Monk Daming continued, I cultivated this Fiend technique and broke free because I wanted to think of a way to dispel your Fiend technique. Nothing is absolute. Everything in the world has its counter. Even the most perfect cultivation techniques have flaws. If you can create the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, I'll definitely be able to dispel it. You. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's heart skipped a beat as he opened his eyes and channeled his Fiend technique, wanting to try and control Monk Daming. Beams of blood chi burst forth from Monk Daming's body. It was as though an evil fiend had awakened within Monk Daming's body. Suddenly, Monk Daming flicked his finger and smiled with a benevolent gaze. A divine and flawless halo appeared behind his head. A powerful Buddhist will descended and suppressed the ferocious fiend in his body. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's expression darkened completely. He had failed. Monk Daming was completely out of his control. Although Su Zimo was resisting the control of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and could not move, he could still sense the situation outside. He finally understood why Monk Daming wanted to collect many cultivation techniques and secret skills over the years. Monk Daming even took the risk to head to Enigma Palace and steal the Mystic Firmament record. That was because he wanted to find a way to dispel the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra using those cultivation techniques. And now, he had succeeded. That was the reason why he shaved his long hair and became Monk Daming once more. Monk Daming did not lose. Chapter 1764, Appearance of the Prime Body. Chapter 1764, Appearance of the Prime Body. Fufufu. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's expression changed and he suddenly laughed. Initially, he merely chuckled. In the end, he reared his head in laughter. Ha ha ha. His laughter was loud and filled with a powerful will that was deafening and spread in all directions. Under normal circumstances, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor should have been dealt a huge blow given that the third clone he had painstakingly cultivated was completely out of his control. Furthermore, this also meant that the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor had lost to Monk Daming this time round. This should be even more unacceptable for the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. However, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor laughed instead of getting angry, as though he was indifferent to everything. Blood chi filled his body and his aura was torrential. Daming, it doesn't matter even if I miscalculated twice. I'll repeat it again, the situation is still under my control. Although you've dispelled the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, you haven't won against me either. As long as I suppress you, I can still assimilate you completely with my Fiend technique. In the end, you still can't beat me. Monk Daming shook his head gently. It won't be so easy to suppress me. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor said proudly, I know your strength the best. Even if you've absorbed and refined endless bloodlines in the battle of the 10,000 races this time round, a single clone of mine is enough to suppress you completely. Monk Daming smiled. Blood Fiend, this is your third miscalculation. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor narrowed his eyes slightly. Monk Daming said indifferently, there's someone you missed out. Impossible. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor said resolutely, I've planned for 40,000 years and all the paragons and monster incarnates born in Tianhuang mainland are within my sights without exception. Monk Daming turned around and said to the void, I can only deal with one of the Blood Fiend's clones. I'll leave Blood Fiend's prime body and his other clone to you. It was clear that Monk Daming was talking to someone. However, the void was empty. The emperors could not see anyone either. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor narrowed his eyes that shone with a blood glint. He released his spirit consciousness and enveloped the void, sealing it completely. Nobody? A puzzled look flashed through the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's eyes. Given his understanding of monk daming, the latter would definitely not do something so mystifying. However, who in Tianhuang mainland could hide from his senses? Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the void and the entire space rippled like a lake. A person walked out slowly from the void ripples. The person wore purple robes that draped over his shoulders. His face was shrouded by a layer of fog and his face was blurry. Instantly, countless gazes landed on the purple-robed man. Who is that? What's his cultivation realm? Many emperors were puzzled. Back then, the martial Tao prime body had only snatched the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Heavenly Dipper sect, Malevolent Earth sect and Penglai Island at the 10,000 race meet. None of the emperors present had seen him before. What surprised the emperors the most was that not only could they not see through the fog on this person's face, they could not even detect his cultivation realm. Everything about this person was a mystery. The storyteller divined in secret. Before long, the storyteller shuddered. He could not divine anything at all. Back then, even when he divined Su Zimo, he could still see some of the latter's background. However, it failed halfway. However, this person was completely untraceable. The blood refinement fiend emperor's expression darkened as well. That was because even he could not tell the purple-robed man's background and cultivation. However, the blood refinement fiend emperor was not worried. The world of Tianhuang mainland was already perfected with complete heaven and earth laws. There was no way this person was an expert of the upper world. Since this was someone from the lower world, the blood refinement fiend emperor believed that he would be able to suppress him with his capabilities. Who are you? The blood refinement fiend emperor narrowed his eyes and asked coldly. Before the martial Tao prime body could reply, Monk Daming smiled gently. Blood fiend, I've just told you earlier that you've underestimated the martial emperor. Desolate martial? The blood refinement fiend emperor frowned. What has that person got to do with desolate martial? The martial Tao prime body was surprised and glanced sideways at Monk Daming, asking with a smile, when did you know? In the ancient battlefield. Monk Daming said, back then, after you and I became emperors and killed Du and the corpse emperor, I mentioned your existence to your green lotus true body. Although your green lotus true body was a little surprised, he was still too calm without any bit of curiosity. At that time, I guessed it. The martial Tao prime body could not help but praise internally. Monk Daming was indeed the smartest and most talented cultivator he had ever encountered. The fact that he was able to dispel the blood refinement fiend Sutra was proof of how strong and talented he was. Since Monk Daming exposed him, there was no need for the martial Tao prime body to hide. The fog on his face gradually dispersed, revealing his true appearance. Initially, the emperors were confused when they heard the conversation between the martial Tao prime body and Monk Daming. However, when the martial Tao prime body revealed his true appearance, it caused an uproar. Ah! How is that possible? Martial Emperor? The emperors widened their eyes in disbelief. The storyteller opened his mouth slightly as well and looked back and forth between the Dragon Phoenix true body, Green Lotus true body and the martial Tao prime body. Could this be the martial emperor's third true body? It was no wonder why the blood refinement fiend emperor was a formidable figure. After his shock, he regained his composure and looked at the martial Tao prime body coldly. Interesting. The blood refinement fiend emperor smiled. To think that your clone could hide so well that even I was fooled. He channeled his fiend technique secretly and his eyes shone with a blood glint, wanting to try and control the martial Tao prime body. There's no need to try. The martial Tao prime body could tell the blood refinement fiend emperor's intentions and said indifferently, your fiend technique is useless against me. The birth of the martial Tao prime body was a variable to begin with. This true body was formed from the martial Tao fruit and gathered the will of the martial Tao, the faith of all living beings and many other powers. There were no traces of the blood refinement fiend Sutra, Good, good, good. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor nodded repeatedly. To think that after plotting for 40,000 years, a variable still appeared. However, it doesn't matter. I want to see who in Tianhuang mainland can defend against my attacks. Kill. Blood chi surged from the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, Tao Wu Demon Emperor and Astral Immortal Emperor as they revealed menacing blood faces, roaring in all directions. The battle broke out instantly. The storyteller, Long Ran and the others looked for the Blood Slave Emperors who had already submitted to the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor right away. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor and his two clones could only be left to the Martial Dao Prime Body and Monk Daming. Even Night Spirit could not interfere in a battle of this level. Chapter 1765, Astral Swap. Chapter 1765, Astral Swap. Monk Daming's figure flashed and he charged towards the Astral Immortal Emperor. Given his combat strength, it was already his limit to be able to hold back a clone of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. He had cultivated for way too short a time. It had only been slightly more than 1,000 years since he was truly reborn and had broken out of seclusion. Both of them used the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra as a foundation. No matter how talented he was, it was difficult to make up for the 10,000 years of accumulation. The Astral Tribulation happened 20,000 years ago. Among the two clones of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, the Astral Immortal Emperor had cultivated for a shorter time. That was the reason why Monk Daming targeted the Astral Immortal Emperor directly. The Martial Dao Prime Body strode towards the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. Although it seemed slow, he arrived in the blink of an eye. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor had a cold expression and glared at the Martial Dao Prime Body fixedly. Both of them attacked at the same time. The Martial Dao Prime Body clenched his fists and his blood chi surged, as though a gigantic furnace was burning with immense power. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's blood chi spread and he was drenched in blood. He punched out as well. That punch seemed to have formed a sea of blood that drowned the Martial Dao Prime Body. Boom! The fists collided with a loud bang. Heaven and earth rumbled. In that instant, the entire battlefield seemed to have paused for a moment and time stopped. This was not only a collision of their strength, but also a fight between fire and water. The punch of the Martial Dao Prime Body was like a volcano that erupted with a terrifying scorching power. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's punch surged like a tide and created waves of blood. The clash between the two of them was evenly matched. Neither of them retreated at all. Actually, the combat strength of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor far surpassed his two clones and was beyond the understanding of ordinary cultivators. It was not something that could be matched after one comprehended a few supreme divine powers. Due to the existence of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could refine bloodlines to temper his flesh and essence spirit continuously. In other words, there was almost no limit to the power of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. One could imagine how strong the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was after 40,000 years of cultivation. It was no exaggeration to say that even if the storyteller and the other emperors released supreme divine powers, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could shatter them with a casual slap. The combat strength of the Martial Dao Prime Body could not be judged using common sense either. The Martial Dao Prime Body smelted 100 sutras and all dermic arts, there was no limit to his strength. Furthermore, the Martial Dao Prime Body had opened up a new cultivation Dao technique and created the Fate Ring secret ground. It could be said that the Martial Dao Prime Body and Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor had already cultivated to the peak of the power of the lower world and were extremely close to experts like the Black Immortals of the upper world. The greatest difference between them and the Black Immortals of the upper world was that they had not undergone Tribulation Transcendence and did not have heaven and earth essence chi in their bodies. That single punch truly shocked the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. He had truly not expected that there would be someone in Tianhuang mainland who could defend against his power. What was even more terrifying was that he could sense an extremely terrifying aura from the martial Tao prime body, as though it wanted to incinerate everything. In fact, it might even incinerate him. The blood refinement fiend emperor felt threatened. However, he did not let his Tao Wu demon emperor clone join him in the battle against the martial emperor prime body. That was because the blood refinement fiend emperor realized that even if he joined forces with the Tao Wu demon emperor, he might not be able to suppress the martial Tao prime body. However, if the Tao Wu demon emperor joined forces with the Astral Immortal emperor, they would be able to suppress Monk Daming in a short period of time. That way, he could conveniently condense a third clone after subduing Monk Daming. At that time, when he attained greater mastery of the Fiend technique and his combat strength increased exponentially, he would definitely be able to kill the martial Tao prime body. The blood refinement fiend emperor willed with a single thought. The Tao Wu demon emperor who was initially charging towards the martial emperor prime body suddenly turned around and charged towards Monk Daming. Humph. Although the martial Tao prime body's back was facing the Tao Wu demon emperor, he sensed this and retreated. Instantly, he arrived behind the ladder and grabbed his gigantic head. Sensing danger, the Tao Wu demon emperor turned his head hurriedly to dodge. However, the martial Tao prime body attacked extremely quickly and descended instantly, slapping the shoulder of the Tao Wu demon emperor. The martial Tao prime body exerted strength in all 5 fingers and they were as sharp as sabers. They pierced the flesh of the Tao Wu demon emperor and blood flashed. The martial Tao prime body raised his arm and grabbed the shoulder of the Tao Wu demon emperor, smashing the latter forward. Boom! A deafening bang that shook the heavens and earth sounded. The massive body of the Tao Wu demon emperor was flung to the ground heavily by the martial Tao prime body, creating a gigantic pit. It was an extremely shocking sight. It was as though a tiny mayfly had uprooted a towering ancient tree and smashed it onto the ground. It was an absolute suppression in terms of strength. The Tao Wu demon emperor's tendons and bones felt like they were about to split and the pain was unbearable. In the blink of an eye, his body that was initially thousands of feet tall returned to its normal height of a human. Although the Tao Wu demon emperor was massive with a terrifying aura and ferocious strength, he was way too clumsy and could not dodge the attack of the martial Tao prime body. The Tao Wu demon emperor could only shrink his body. Right then, the blood refinement fiend emperor charged forward once more and swung the slender fishing rod in his hands towards the martial Tao prime body. Swoosh! A white light that was incomparably stunning flashed like lightning in the night skies. The skin on the fishing rod shattered silently, revealing a cold glint within. How was that a fishing rod? It was a sharp, thin saber. At the same time, on another battlefield, Monk Daming exchanged blows consecutively with the Astral Immortal Emperor in melee combat. However, he retreated repeatedly and his organs vibrated as his blood chi surged. He was completely disadvantaged. Monk Daming's physique was strong and his blood chi was terrifying. Back then, he could even fight the martial Tao prime body in melee combat. But now, he was completely suppressed by the Astral Immortal Emperor. The Astral Immortal Emperor had cultivated for too long and was at least 20,000 years older than Monk Daming. In terms of melee combat techniques, the Astral Immortal Emperor was not disadvantaged at all. If this continued, Monk Daming would be beaten to death by the Astral Immortal Emperor in melee combat. Monk Daming retreated continuously and suddenly bit his finger, spilling his blood as an emperor. He channeled his essence spirit and his gaze intensified, revealing a cold killing intent. Waving his blood-stained finger, he wrote a blood-colored word rapidly in front of him. Kill. It was the supreme divine power of the eternal human emperor, the killing word art. A terrifying divine power spread. The word kill was formed instantly and possessed an extremely terrifying killing power. It charged towards the Astral Immortal Emperor, wanting to kill him. Foo-foo. The Astral Immortal Emperor sneered and channeled his essence spirit as well. He extended his arm and pointed at the incoming killing word art, shouting softly, "Astral swap." This was also a supreme divine power, Astral swap. After that divine power was released, a strange divine power enveloped the killing word art. Suddenly, the astral immortal emperor turned and pointed at the martial Tao prime body in another battlefield. The killing word art changed directions and charged towards the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 1766, Domineering and Invincible. Chapter 1766, Domineering and Invincible. Astral swap was a supreme divine power. Although it did not have a powerful killing power, it was not to be underestimated. The killing word art was one of the supreme divine powers with the most terrifying killing power. However, its target was shifted by astral swap. The killing word art did not pose any threat to the astral immortal emperor. Instead, it charged towards the martial Tao prime body. At the same time, the saber in the hands of the blood refinement fiend emperor transformed into a white streak of light and descended. The shrunken Tao Wu demon emperor was filled with demonic qi and the stench of blood as he lunged towards the martial Tao prime body as well. The tides had turned entirely. At that moment it was equivalent to the blood refinement fiend emperor joining forces with his two clones to launch a ferocious attack on the martial Tao prime body. It was 1 against 3. The martial Tao prime body took a deep breath and his gaze intensified. Without even looking at the killing word art that was charging from behind, he punched in reverse. At the same time, he exhaled a stream of white qi. The white qi emitted an extremely sharp intent with a chilling killing intent. In midair, it condensed two divine beasts, the divine dragon and soaring serpent, and charged towards the Tao Wu demon emperor. The white qi spat out by the martial Tao prime body was no ordinary sword qi, it was the sword qi condensed by the earth-slaying sword art. At the same time, the martial Tao prime body extended his fist and punched towards the saber. Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed when the saber struck the fist of the martial Tao prime body. The fist of the martial Tao prime body was intact. The blood refinement fiend emperor's heart skipped a beat. The flesh of the martial Tao prime body was tempered with the martial spirit fire all year round and was like a gigantic furnace that smelted all dermic arts and was indestructible. The body of the martial Tao prime body could suppress all dermic treasures in Tianhuang mainland. Even the human emperor's seal could not injure the martial Tao prime body at all. Before the blood refinement fiend emperor could retract his saber, the martial Tao prime body suddenly changed tactics. His entire arm suddenly went limp and wrapped around the saber like a divine elephant's trunk. Piak! The arms of the martial Tao prime body coiled, trembled and yanked. The blood refinement fiend emperor shuddered. He felt a terrifying power of distortion, vibration and tearing burst forth from his palm through the saber in his hands. The blood refinement fiend emperor's palm was torn instantly and fresh blood dripped. Unable to hold on, his saber flew out of his hands. The blood refinement fiend emperor's saber was indeed a high-quality dermic treasure. If it was an ordinary dermic treasure, it would have been turned into scrap metal by the martial Tao prime body's sweep and destroyed completely. The saber fell. On the other side, the killing word art collided with the fist of the martial Tao prime body. The incomparably sharp divine power tore at the arm and fist of the martial Tao prime body continuously, wanting to slice his flesh. However, the martial Tao prime body was unmoved. His blood qi burst forth and shattered the killing word art with a single punch, dissipating it. The Tao Wu demon emperor released his innate divine powers and tore apart the divine dragon and soaring serpent conjured by the earth-slaying sword qi before long, glaring at the martial Tao prime body murderously. The martial Tao prime body resolved the attacks of the three of them single-handedly. Of course, the martial Tao prime body did not dare to be careless either. In fact, he did not even dare to reveal his trump cards casually. That was because the blood refinement fiend emperor definitely had a powerful trump card. On the other side, Monk Daming released his supreme divine power once more and fought against the Astral Immortal Emperor. Kill. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor carried a rich blood chi and lunged towards the martial Dao Prime body, saying coldly, "I don't believe that my 40,000 years of cultivation can't compare to a junior like you who's only more than 1,000 years old." The Tao Wu Demon Emperor attacked at the same time. The martial Dao Prime body was fearless and strode forward with a deep gaze, punching towards the two emperors. Boom! It was as though a volcano had erupted within the body of the martial Dao Prime body. That punch was as violent as fire and released a suffocating power. Bang! 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 The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor and the Tao Wu Demon Emperor exchanged blows consecutively with the martial Dao Prime body in melee combat. It was a clash of strength without any technique. After a series of head-on collisions, energy was released wildly and blood chi devoured one another. The martial Dao Prime body stood in midair with his black hair dancing and a burning gaze. He was not disadvantaged against two people. The void in the battlefield of the three of them was torn apart and riddled with holes. The three of them had almost left the world of Tianhuang mainland and were in the wild currents of the void. Their figures were faintly visible through the shattered void. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's 40,000 years of cultivation was indeed terrifying. After so many years of refining bloodlines, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's body and blood chi had already reached an unimaginable level. The power released by a casual punch from the martial Dao Prime body was enough to shatter a dermic treasure. However, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could fight the martial Dao Prime body head-on in melee combat. The two of them attacked faster and fiercer. In the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged 1,000 blows. This was not only a fight of strength, but also a fight of blood chi and stamina. Both of them had expended a lot of energy in that clash. With 40,000 years of cultivation as a foundation, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's bloodline naturally surged and his stamina was strong. As for the martial Dao Prime body, he cultivated the martial Dao and tempered his body all year round with the martial spirit fire. His body was like a gigantic furnace with raging flames that burned brighter and brighter. Both of them could guarantee that they would be fine after exchanging 1,000 blows. However, the Tao Wu Demon Emperor at the side merely received a punch from the martial Emperor Prime body every now and then. Even so, he was already pale by now with his flesh split apart, drenched in blood. During this period of time, his body was shattered countless times by the power of the martial Dao Prime body and reconstructed. However, the battle between the three of them showed no signs of stopping. Kill. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor roared and his blood chi surged, spewing out and transforming into a gigantic, menacing blood face behind him that devoured towards the martial Dao Prime body. Bloodline Phenomenon. The blood face phenomenon was conjured by the Tao Wu Demon Emperor at the same time. Two blood faces descended with an extremely evil aura. Burn it. The martial Dao Prime body channeled his blood chi at the same time and seemed to have vanished. In his place was a gigantic furnace that burned with raging flames, turning it red and almost transparent. The blood faces collided with the martial Dao furnace and let out an ear-piercing scream. The three bloodline phenomenons collided. Initially, it was difficult to determine the victor. However, after half an hour, the two blood faces could not withstand the heat of the martial Dao furnace and gradually withered, defeated. Battle. The martial Dao Prime body revealed himself and hollered. His aura intensified and he attacked once more, enveloping the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor and the Tao Wu Demon Emperor. The martial Dao Prime body fought fiercer. The martial Dao was about advancing courageously. In such a fight, the will of the martial Dao was tempered to an even stronger level. The power of the martial Dao Prime body rose continuously as well. The difference between them was clear. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was gradually disadvantaged and defended more with less counterattacks. It was even more so for the Tao Wu Demon Emperor, who was forced to retreat in defeat. The martial Tao Prime Body fought 1 against 2 and was domineering and invincible. His aura was torrential as he looked down like an emperor and suppressed the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor and the Tao Wu Demon Emperor completely. Chapter 1767, Blood Net. Chapter 1767, Blood Net. The fight between the other emperors did not pose much of a threat to the emperors of the human race. After all, Night Spirit had comprehended 2 supreme divine powers and was almost invincible among the emperors. However, the outcome of the situation here could not change the bigger picture. The only way Tianhuang mainland could escape this catastrophe was by killing the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor completely. The emperors were not directly involved and could clearly see that although the martial Tao Prime Body was suppressing the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor and the Tao Wu Demon Emperor, it was 1 against 2. It was still impossible if he wanted to suppress the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor directly within a short period of time. On the other side, the outcome of the fight between Monk Daming and the Astral Immortal Emperor was about to be decided. Monk Daming's cultivation time was still too short. Although Monk Daming had dispelled the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and possessed many profoundness of the Buddhist monasteries, it was still difficult to make up for the difference after tens of thousands of years of accumulation. In terms of strength and divine powers, Monk Daming was disadvantaged. Up till this point of the battle, Monk Daming was already covered in injuries and looked wretched, having expended a lot of blood chi. However, the Astral Immortal Emperor was in a much better state. His clothes fluttered and every single move he made still exuded a carefree aura. The difference between them was clear. The storyteller was worried. If Monk Daming was suppressed by the Astral Immortal Emperor, it would mean that the martial Tao Prime Body would have to fight 1 against 3. What was even more serious was that there was a high chance the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could refine his 3rd clone once Monk Daming was suppressed. At that time, even the martial Tao Prime Body would not be a match for the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's perfected Fiend technique. Right then, another change happened on the 2 most critical battlefields. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was suppressed by the martial Tao Prime Body and the blood glint in his eyes surged, he could no longer hold it in. It was even worse on the side of the Tao Wu Demon Emperor as he was drenched in blood. Absorb. Suddenly, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor took out a fishnet from his storage bag and bit the tip of his tongue. He spat out a mouthful of essence blood and splashed it on the fishnet. Buzz! The fishnet shone with a blood light and turned blood-colored in the blink of an eye, emitting an extremely evil aura. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor waved his hand. The blood-colored fishnet enveloped the martial Tao Prime Body. The martial Tao Prime Body frowned slightly and dodged to the side in a flash. Through his spirit perception, the martial Tao Prime Body could sense that the blood-colored fishnet was not easy to deal with. However, no matter how the martial Tao Prime Body dodged, he could not break free from the envelopment of the fishnet. The martial Tao Prime Body dodged repeatedly. Not only did he fail to break free from the blood-colored fishnet, he got closer to it instead. Humph. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor sneered, I refined this blood net using a secret skill of the upper world for 40,000 years. Even if you can fly or burrow underground, you won't be able to escape. Right after he said that, the blood-colored fishnet descended and enveloped the martial Tao Prime Body. The moment the blood-colored fishnet made contact with the martial Tao Prime Body, it stuck close and constricted continuously. Break! The blood chi of the martial Tao Prime Body surged and his body expanded. His flesh swelled and he wanted to burst forth with the power in his body to break the blood-colored fishnet. However, the blood-colored fishnet expanded alongside his body. His power was useless against the blood-colored fishnet. The fishnet was soft to begin with. The power of the martial Tao Prime Body was the most ferocious and was countered by the fishnet. Although the burst power of the martial Tao Prime Body was ferocious, the fishnet spread in all directions and dissipated it. Not only that, when the blood-colored fishnet approached the flesh of the martial Tao prime body, it began to emit an evil blood chi that seeped into the latter's body through his purple robes. The martial Tao prime body frowned slightly. This blood-colored fishnet was indeed terrifying. If he could not break free from the fishnet, he would easily be assimilated and devoured, let alone kill the blood refinement fiend emperor. The situation changed once more. In the blink of an eye, the martial Tao prime body was in a passive position. On the other side, Monk Daming looked a little dispirited, but he had no intention of retreating. His gaze was still benevolent as he looked at the astral immortal emperor not far away. He clasped his palms together and closed his eyes, chanting Sanskrit. Suddenly, one after another, tall and sacred Buddhas appeared around the astral immortal emperor, shining brightly with unparalleled might. Every single Buddha chanted Buddhist sutras that reverberated through the world. Shadows of divine dragons and elephants gradually appeared around the gigantic Buddhas. The divine dragons roared and the divine elephants trumpeted. It was the strongest supreme divine power of the Buddhist monasteries, Buddha Dragon Elephant. Buddha Dragon Elephant could only be comprehended if one had the deepest comprehension of Buddhism and was fused with many profoundness of the Buddhist monasteries. Even the green lotus true body had not comprehended that supreme divine power. Monk Daming was the only one in Tianhuang mainland who could do it. Buddha Dragon Elephant descended and a terrifying power suppressed the astral immortal emperor. Starfall. With a grim expression, the astral immortal emperor did not dare to be careless and hurriedly released his supreme divine power as well. Instantly, the world shook. Countless stars in the firmament streaked with terrifying auras and flames descended towards Tianhuang mainland. However, with the protection of the Buddhist lights and dragon elephants, those stars could not shake the power of the Buddhas. Hellblood Shield. The expression of the astral immortal emperor changed starkly as he realized that a single supreme divine power could not shake Buddha Dragon Elephant. Immediately, he released a second supreme divine power. The moment Buddha Dragon Elephant appeared, the astral immortal emperor wanted to release two supreme divine powers in succession to defend. Boom! 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 The power of the Buddhas collided with the stars. Countless Sanskrit sounds suppressed the astral immortal emperor. Endless divine Buddhist lights descended, wanting to purify the astral immortal emperor. However, the astral immortal emperor reacted extremely quickly and conjured a shimmering blood-colored shield above his head that covered the skies and hid him behind it. Countless Sanskrit and Buddhist lights landed on the hell-blood shield and created ripples. The astral immortal emperor's face was a little pale. This was the first time he felt threatened by Monk Daming. Thankfully, his cultivation was extremely deep and he managed to defend against Buddha Dragon Elephant with two supreme divine powers. Since he managed to defend against it, it was time for Monk Daming to die. On another battlefield. When the martial Tao prime body sensed that, he was invigorated as well. The martial spirit fire in his body burned furiously and he seemed to have transformed into a gigantic furnace, wanting to burn the blood-colored fishnet to ashes. Buzz! Buzz! However, the blood-colored fishnet emitted streams of blood chi that resisted the martial Tao furnace. The martial Tao furnace could not incinerate it instantly. When the blood refinement fiend emperor saw that, he frowned slightly and felt uneasy. I can't delay any longer. I have to resolve everything as soon as possible. The blood refinement fiend emperor's eyes shone with a blood glint. Blood-boiling spear. Almost at the same time, the blood refinement fiend emperor and the Tao Wu demon emperor channeled their essence spirits and condensed supreme divine powers. A bloodied spear was condensed in the palms of the two emperors. Their bloodline surged and steam billowed as they threw it towards the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 1768, Blood Face Mask. Chapter 1768, Blood Face Mask. The blood net shrank continuously and blood chi spread, restricting the movements of the martial Tao prime body. If it was just two supreme divine powers, they would not be a threat to the martial Tao prime body. However, in the blood net, the power of the martial Tao prime body could not be released at all. His body was drenched in blood and his strength was greatly suppressed. Two spears made of fresh blood tore through the air with a scorching aura. Those two supreme divine powers could not kill the martial Tao prime body yet. However, if he could not break free from the blood net, the martial Tao prime body would be equivalent to a live target. The blood refinement fiend emperor and the Tao Wu demon emperor would attack continuously and release ferocious attacks. The body of the martial Tao prime body might not be able to withstand it either. At that thought, the martial Tao prime body channeled his essence spirit and an incomparably scorching divine power surged from his body. Suddenly, scarlet flames burst forth from his body. The blood refinement fiend emperor narrowed his gaze and his heart skipped a beat. The scarlet flames made his heart skip a beat. Incinerating firmament boiling sea? Dragon phoenix flame? Something's not right. The blood refinement fiend emperor denied internally that the flames were definitely not the two above. This was a divine power that he had never seen before. In the blink of an eye, the two blood-boiling spears arrived before the martial Tao prime body. However, when the two supreme divine powers collided with the flames of the martial Tao prime body, they were burned by the flames instantly like snow meeting a blazing sun. The two supreme divine powers could not injure the martial Tao prime body at all. The martial Tao prime body burned with flames, but his gaze was cold as he glared at the blood refinement fiend emperor not far away. A crystalline lotus flower that shone with a red glow gradually formed in his palm. It burned with flames and spun slowly. The blood light on the fishnet began to dim. The entire fishnet crackled from the heat and twisted wildly as its aura weakened continuously. After the flaming red lotus was formed, the blood-colored fishnet could no longer hold on and a gigantic hole was burned out. The dermic treasure that the blood refinement fiend emperor had nurtured for 40,000 years was completely destroyed and fell from the martial Tao prime body. Ah! When the blood refinement fiend emperor saw that, his eyes widened and he was enraged. He wanted to attack and retrieve the broken fishnet. Right then, a voice sounded in the blood refinement fiend emperor's mind. Don't go. It's a karmic flame. The blood refinement fiend emperor was slightly stunned. That's the red lotus karmic fire. Retreat first. The voice in the blood refinement fiend emperor's mind turned grim. Right then, the martial Tao prime body threw the red lotus karmic fire in his hands towards the blood refinement fiend emperor. The red lotus karmic fire transformed into a streak of light and arrived instantly. The blood refinement fiend emperor hated the red lotus immensely and condensed another supreme divine power, the blood fiend palm, to grab the red lotus karmic fire. Don't touch it. The voice in the blood refinement fiend emperor's mind sounded once more, but it was too late. A gigantic blood-colored palm grabbed the karmic flame. Instead of injuring the karmic flame, the blood-colored palm was burned into 1,000 holes. The blood refinement fiend emperor's pupils constricted. Realizing how powerful it was, he retreated and wanted to avoid the red lotus karmic fire. However, the karmic flame burned the blood-colored palm and extended along the supreme divine power. A wisp of the karmic flame landed on the blood refinement fiend emperor. Negative karma exists because of the cycle of karma. The karmic flame was like a catalyst. Although it was only a small flame, it ignited the negative karma on the blood refinement fiend emperor instantly. Instantly, raging flames burned on the blood refinement fiend emperor's body. For the past 40,000 years, the blood refinement fiend emperor schemed against the 10,000 races and planned for catastrophes single-handedly. His hands were tainted with the blood of countless living beings. Those were all negative karma. The deeper the negative karma, the more terrifying the lethality of the karmic flame. In the blink of an eye, the blood refinement Fiend Emperor was burned into a gigantic fireball that engulfed his body completely. Ah! 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 The blood refinement Fiend Emperor's tragic cry sounded from the fireball in extreme pain. The red lotus karmic fire struck the blood refinement Fiend Emperor heavily and almost penetrated his body. The blood refinement Fiend Emperor spat out a mouthful of blood that was burned to ashes by the karmic flame before it could spill. At the side, the Tao Wu Demon Emperor was horrified and hid at the side hurriedly, not daring to advance. Before long, the tragic cries from the gigantic fireball stopped. The blood refinement Fiend Emperor is dead? The emperors were invigorated. If the blood refinement Fiend Emperor was dead, given the combat strength of the martial Dao Prime Body, even the two clones of the Tao Wu Demon Emperor and the Astral Immortal Emperor would not be his match. The martial Dao Prime Body frowned slightly. Only he knew that the blood refinement Fiend Emperor was not dead. If the blood refinement Fiend Emperor died, the Dragon Phoenix True Body and Green Lotus True Body would break free from the restraints of the blood refinement Fiend Sutra. Right now, the two true bodies were still defending against the power of the blood refinement Fiend Sutra and could barely fend for themselves. The gigantic light of the karmic flame gradually shrank and dimmed. The blood refinement Fiend Emperor's figure reappeared. He looked extremely wretched. His flesh was split open by the karmic flame and his flesh was mangled. However, his body was still filled with a powerful life force. Furthermore, that aura was rising rapidly. The gaze of the martial Dao Prime Body focused. The blood refinement Fiend Emperor wore a blood face mask. The blood face mask was filled with a powerful fiend chi that surged into the blood refinement Fiend Emperor's body continuously, repairing his body. The blood refinement Fiend Emperor's injuries healed at a visible speed. This blood face mask was the one that suppressed the karmic flame of the martial Dao Prime Body. Desolate Martial, you sure are full of surprises. Through the mask, the blood refinement Fiend Emperor's voice was filled with deep hatred as he said coldly, "Let's see what else you have." Before his sentence was finished, the blood refinement Fiend Emperor released a torrential blood chi and charged towards the martial Dao Prime Body. The blood refinement Fiend Emperor punched out. The martial Dao Prime Body punched forward as well. Boom! There was a loud bang. The martial Dao Prime Body shuddered and crackling sounds came from his body, as though his bones were about to fall apart. Thud! 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 The martial Dao Prime Body could not defend against the punch of the blood refinement Fiend Emperor and retreated 3 steps in succession. The martial Dao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat. After wearing the blood face mask, the power of the blood refinement Fiend Emperor had actually risen to an extremely terrifying level where the martial Dao Prime Body was almost severely injured. Not only that, the blood chi in the blood refinement Fiend Emperor's body seemed to be sentient and extended along the fist of the martial Dao Prime Body towards his arm. In the blink of an eye, the palm of the martial Dao Prime Body was filled with blood threads. Splash! Splash! The blood threads contained an extremely evil power that corroded the flesh of the martial Dao Prime Body, causing green smoke to billow. The martial Dao Prime Body had a grim expression. It was clear that the blood refinement Fiend Emperor was making use of another power. Fiend chi surged endlessly from the blood face mask, and with the augmentation of that power, the combat strength of the blood refinement Fiend Emperor increased exponentially. Chapter 1769, Heavenly Fiend Dissolution. Chapter 1769, Heavenly Fiend Dissolution. Boom! 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 3 loud bangs sounded from the body of the martial Dao Prime Body, as though he had broken free from some shackles and opened some secret ground. 3 mysterious purple halos appeared behind the martial Dao Prime Body with countless Dao and dermic arts. 3 fate rings appeared. The aura of the martial Dao Prime Body surged and the power in his body rose rapidly. Under the envelopment of the three purple halos, the martial Tao prime body was like a true god that looked down on the world and was unparalleled. What is this? The blood refinement fiend emperor murmured with a bewildered expression. This time round, the voice did not sound. That was because even the voice did not understand what the three spinning purple halos behind the martial Tao prime body represented. The three fate rings appeared and the blood-colored threads on the palm of the martial Tao prime body were dispersed instantly. Battle! The martial Tao prime body hollered and carried the three fate rings. He moved his feet and Tao techniques interweaved, forming the image of a turtle snake. With a torrential aura, the martial Tao prime body stepped on the turtle snake and descended before the blood refinement fiend emperor, throwing out a punch. That punch was indestructible and could destroy everything. The blood refinement fiend emperor raised his arm as well and channeled his blood chi. The blood face mask released rumbling fiend chi that gathered on his arms to fight the martial Tao prime body head-on. Boom! There was a deafening bang. Both of them took a step back. The two of them were already in the void currents and their surroundings were dark and endless. However, the power released by that punch still caused Tianhuang mainland to tremble. Ah! The blood refinement fiend emperor growled. Suddenly, the blood face mask released countless blood faces that surrounded the martial Tao prime body and bit wildly. The fate rings behind the martial Tao prime body spun slowly. The moment the blood faces charged forward, they were destroyed by the three fate rings. The three fate rings of the martial Tao prime body could even crush all dermic treasures in the world. Boom! 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 The two of them charged together once more and exchanged blows repeatedly. Their blood chi collided and their fists clashed, releasing a violent flurry of attacks. Up till this point of the battle, both of them had given it their all without holding back. Although the martial Tao prime body had the upper hand, the blood refinement fiend emperor had the help of the blood face mask and there were not many chances for the martial Tao prime body to suppress him. The blood refinement fiend emperor could not break free from the attacks of the martial Tao prime body either. The martial Tao prime body had the upper hand and released a suffocating attack. Like a storm, he suppressed everyone with his supreme strength and immense stamina. Do you have any ideas? The blood refinement fiend emperor roared internally, "You're always bragging about your background. Can't you defeat this person from the lower world? My strength has yet to recover." A voice sounded in the blood refinement fiend emperor's mind. Furthermore, there's a limit to my strength in the lower world. I wonder what dermic formulation he cultivated that has already broken through that limit. Even if we don't kill him, he'll definitely die when he attempts Tribulation Transcendence in the future. The blood refinement fiend emperor grit his teeth. I can't wait for him to undergo the Tribulation Transcendence anymore. I'm suppressed by him right now and can't even escape. What's the use of telling me about the Tribulation Transcendence? You're also trash. The voice sounded and sneered, "I told you to refine monk Daming a long time ago but you refused to listen and allowed him to cultivate. Now, he managed to dispel the blood refinement fiend Sutra and left a huge flaw in your fiend technique. If your fiend technique was perfected, you wouldn't have had to worry about killing this person." Sensing the danger on the side of the blood refinement fiend emperor, the attacks of the Astral Immortal Emperor became even more ferocious. After Buddha Dragon Elephant was dispelled, monk Daming no longer had any trump cards. Under the attacks of the Astral Immortal Emperor, he was forced to retreat in defeat and his body was severely injured. Even with monk Daming's regeneration capabilities, it would be difficult for him to recover within a short period of time. While the martial Tao prime body was fighting the blood refinement fiend emperor, the Tao Wu demon emperor seized the opportunity to escape and charged in the direction of monk Daming. He was prepared to join forces with the Astral Immortal Emperor to suppress monk Daming as soon as possible. With that, the blood refinement fiend emperor could refine monk Daming into his third clone and his fiend technique would be perfected. He would definitely be able to turn defeat into victory. Monk Daming's face was pale as he retreated continuously. However, his gaze was still benevolent without any emotions in his eyes. Kill. The Astral Immortal Emperor strode forward and extended his gigantic palm, releasing an extremely ferocious power as though he wanted to pluck the stars in the firmaments. Supreme Divine Power, Star-Plucking Hand. The gigantic hand crushed down towards Monk Daming. It's time to end this. Monk Daming sighed gently and looked at the Astral Immortal Emperor not far away. Instead of retreating, he charged forward. Do you have a death wish? The Astral Immortal Emperor cursed. Naturally, he would not kill Monk Daming. All he had to do was lock the latter's essence spirit and release his secret skill to assimilate the latter completely. Monk Daming smiled gently and a destructive aura burst forth from his body. The aura was extremely berserk and almost drowned the Astral Immortal Emperor. The moment the Tao Wu Demon Emperor charged forward, he sensed that something was amiss. He was a demon after all, and his spirit perception was different from ordinary people. Without thinking, he retreated. You. Suddenly, the eyes of the Astral Immortal Emperor widened as though he realized something. His eyes were filled with deep fear and his voice was trembling. Heavenly Fiend Dissolution. Monk Daming said. Boom. The moment he said that, Monk Daming's body exploded in front of the Astral Immortal Emperor, creating a terrifying storm that engulfed the latter instantly. At that moment, the world seemed to have stopped. Accompanied by that loud bang, even the battlefield of the Emperors was shaken violently. The Emperors turned and looked at everything in disbelief. Right in front of the Emperors, the Astral Immortal Emperor was torn apart by the destructive storm without a corpse or essence spirit left. Heavenly Fiend Dissolution. The storyteller was shocked. Heavenly Fiend Dissolution was a legendary supreme divine power. It was said that the person who released that supreme divine power would die right away. However, the moment his body disintegrated, it would release an extremely powerful storm that would destroy everything in its surrounding and devour all life. Nobody expected Monk Daming to comprehend that supreme divine power. Less than that, nobody expected Monk Daming to release Heavenly Fiend Dissolution without hesitation and die at the same time as the Astral Immortal Emperor. No! The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor roared when he sensed what happened in Tianhuang mainland. The death of the Astral Immortal Emperor meant that one of his clones had vanished completely. More than that, it meant that an even greater flaw had appeared in his fiend technique. Of course, what the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor truly could not accept was the death of Monk Daming. That was because the death of Monk Daming meant that he had lost completely in their fight. He no longer had a chance to turn the tides. Monk Daming was his eternal weakness. Chapter 1770, Benevolence of Monk Daming. Chapter 1770, Benevolence of Monk Daming. Monk Daming was dead. The impact was not only limited to taking away a clone of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. More than that, Monk Daming's choice caused an irreparable flaw in the Fiend Emperor Blood Refinement's fiend technique that he would never be able to perfect in his lifetime. The fight between the two of them that lasted for 40,000 years finally came to a conclusion at this moment. Although Monk Daming died, he won the fight between the two of them. As though he was struck by lightning, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's aura decreased. Initially, because Su Zimo's two true bodies were not deeply fiendish, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could only barely hold them back with the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. But now that Monk Daming and the Astral Immortal Emperor were both dead, the fiend technique of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was severely injured. The auras of the two true bodies surged as they broke free from the restraints and influence of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and woke up. The death of Monk Daming dealt a huge psychological blow to the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. In fact, a flaw even appeared in the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's Tao heart. Others might not be able to sense that slight change, but the martial Tao prime body who was fighting the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor sensed it the most. It was as though the blood refinement Fiend Emperor had aged significantly at that moment and had become dispirited. Su Zimo looked in the direction where Monk Daming died in silence. It was empty without anything left behind. The human emperor's mirror, the grand primordium ancient temple and everything else had already turned into ashes. All traces of Monk Daming vanished without a trace in the heavenly fiend Dissolution. Scenes of his encounter with Monk Daming flashed through Su Zimo's mind as though it was yesterday. He had never understood Monk Daming. He could never tell what Monk Daming was thinking. Monk Daming cultivated the blood refinement Fiend Sutra and broke out of his coffin. His hands were stained with endless blood and he was no longer the compassionate monk of the past. However, Monk Daming still possessed the Buddhist nature. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cultivate the strongest supreme divine power of the Buddhist monasteries, the Buddha dragon elephant. Su Zimo did not know if Monk Daming was a Buddha or a fiend. It was only at this moment that he truly understood Monk Daming. The moment Monk Daming broke out of the coffin, he had no intention of living. His only goal in life was to dispel the blood refinement Fiend Sutra and defeat Blood Fiend. He had succeeded. Therefore, the reason why Monk Daming shaved his long hair and regained his usual appearance in this battle was also because he was prepared to die. Heavenly Fiend Dissolution was a supreme divine power of the Fiend sections. However, Monk Daming released it with the benevolence of the Buddhist monasteries. The storyteller and all the emperors looked in the direction where Monk Daming disappeared. Apart from shock, there was only respect in their eyes. 1,000 years ago, when the eternal human emperor descended, he clearly saw that Monk Daming cultivated a fiend technique. However, he still handed the human emperor's mirror to Monk Daming. Perhaps it was because the eternal human emperor could also sense the benevolence in the depths of Monk Daming's heart. Roar! Ah! The dragon phoenix true body and green lotus true body roared into the skies with surging blood chi. The dragon phoenix true body reverted to his true form and burned with the dragon phoenix flames as he charged towards the Tao Wu demon emperor. The green lotus true body released 3 heads 6 arms as well. Wielding many dermic treasures, he charged and suppressed the Tao Wu demon emperor. The 2 true bodies joined forces and fought against the Tao Wu demon emperor. Boom! 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 The moment they made contact, an earth-shaking collision broke out. Under normal circumstances, the Tao Wu demon emperor's combat strength was above Su Zimo's 2 true bodies. However, in the battle earlier on, the Tao Wu demon emperor was severely injured by the martial Dao prime body and had expended a lot of energy, decreasing his combat strength. Chapter 1771, End. Chapter 1771, End. Although the origin of the blood face mask was unknown, there was a high chance it came from the upper world. Even the full-powered attack of the martial Dao prime body could not suppress it. Even if Su Zimo summoned other dermic treasures, it would be useless. Although the bronze square tripod was filled with cracks and looked completely crippled, it was indestructible ever since Su Zimo obtained it. Even against all the top dermic treasures of Tianhuang mainland, the bronze square tripod was not damaged. Su Zimo did not think too much about it when he summoned the bronze square tripod. He merely thought that he might be able to use the bronze square tripod to restrain the blood face mask and let the martial Dao prime body think of a way to suppress it. To think that there would be a living being hidden in the blood face mask. Its reaction was extremely intense, as though it knew the bronze square tripod. If the blood face mask came from the upper world, the bronze square tripod must have come from the upper world as well. Furthermore, the blood face mask seemed to be extremely fearful of the bronze square tripod. Boom! The bronze square tripod descended and smashed onto the blood face mask. Ah! A tragic cry sounded from the blood face mask. The rumbling fiend chi around the blood face mask was shattered by that attack and the blood on the mask splattered everywhere. The blood water rapidly formed a drop of blood in midair that emitted an evil aura, wanting to attach itself to the mask once more. At that moment, the martial Tao prime body decisively abandoned the blood refinement Fiend Emperor and descended. He raised the bronze square tripod and suppressed once more. Boom! Another loud bang sounded. The drop of blood was shattered by the bronze square tripod once more. Even if the drop of blood condensed once more, the blood light would dim significantly. The martial Tao prime body reached out and held the remaining drop of blood in his palm. With a single thought, the martial Tao prime body gathered his fingers and an impenetrable prison was formed in his palm. Although the drop of blood was dim, it was still extremely violent and was shrouded by fiend chi. From time to time, the drop of blood would transform into a strange and menacing blood face. At other times, it would condense into a lifeless tombstone that rampaged in the palm of the martial Tao prime body, wanting to break free. Humph! The martial Tao prime body sneered and conjured the martial spirit fire and red lotus karmic fire in his palm. The two flames burned at the same time. Ah! 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 The drop of blood let out a tragic cry in extreme pain. Even so, the two flames could not refine it completely. He did not know the origin of that drop of blood, let alone whose blood it was. Although it was only a single drop and even fell to the lower world, it could still defend against the power of the martial spirit fire and the red lotus karmic fire. The battle was not over yet. The martial Tao prime body put away the prison and let the martial spirit fire and red lotus karmic fire burn and refine that drop of blood continuously. The two balls of flames could not refine it. However, it was also extremely difficult for that drop of blood to break free from the prison conjured by the martial Tao prime body. The martial Tao prime body picked up the mask floating in midair. Without the taint of the blood light, the mask returned to its original appearance. It was silver-white and made of an unknown material that was slightly cold to the touch. The martial Tao prime body squeezed with his palm, wanting to crush it and throw it away. However, the silver mask was intact. That attack from the martial Tao prime body could crush even dermic treasures into scrap metal. To think that he could not crush a mask that was as thin as cicada wings. The silver mask was clearly extraordinary. The martial Tao prime body put away the silver mask as well and threw the bronze square tripod back to the green lotus true body. In a flash, he arrived before the blood refinement Fiend Emperor. Without the blood face mask, the blood refinement Fiend Emperor's aura and strength decreased significantly. The injuries he accumulated in the battle against the martial Tao prime body were completely released within a short period of time and he aged considerably. On another battlefield. Against the encirclement of the two true bodies, the Tao Wu Demon Emperor was already at the end of the road. The Dragon Phoenix true body extended his menacing sharp claws and lunged forward to fight the Tao Wu Demon Emperor in close combat. He bit wildly and released his innate divine powers repeatedly. The world shook and the void on the battlefield was filled with cracks. The Dragon Phoenix true body restrained the Tao Wu Demon Emperor tightly. Su Zimo received the bronze square tripod that the martial Tao prime body threw back and raised it. Leaping up, he smashed it towards the head of the Tao Wu Demon Emperor. Bang! The Tao Wu Demon Emperor could not dodge thanks to the entanglement of the Dragon Phoenix true body. He could only turn his head slightly and avoid fatal damage. The bronze square tripod smashed heavily on his shoulder. Accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, the shoulder of the Tao Wu Demon Emperor was smashed into pieces by the bronze square tripod. Roar! He let out a pained roar. Half of his body was almost crushed by the bronze square tripod. The Dragon Phoenix true body took advantage of the situation and snapped the head of the Tao Wu Demon Emperor with a single bite. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. The moment the Tao Wu Demon Emperor's essence spirit escaped, a shadow enveloped it. The bronze square tripod descended once more. Bang! The essence spirit of the Tao Wu Demon Emperor was destroyed on the spot by the bronze square tripod. The second clone of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was dead as well. After the death of two clones as well as the loss of the Blood Face Mask, the combat strength of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was greatly reduced. Blood Fiend, prepare to die. The gaze of the martial Tao Prime Body intensified and his attacks became increasingly ferocious. He threw punch after punch without giving the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor any chance to catch his breath. Bang! Finally, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor could not withstand it and his defense was broken by a single punch from the martial Tao Prime Body, striking his chest heavily. That punch almost severed the life force in the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's body. The blood chi of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor began to deteriorate rapidly and his life force drained. The current Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor no longer had his initial glory. His body was dilapidated and his hair was disheveled. He was covered in injuries and was at the end of his road. Fu. Suddenly, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor laughed and murmured, "To think that I would still lose to you in the end. Ha ha ha." It was clear that the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was not referring to Su Zimo. The laughter gradually stopped and the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor suddenly raised his head. He glared at the martial Tao Prime Body fiercely and grit his teeth. "Desolate Martial, if not for Monk Daming, you wouldn't have been able to defeat me." The martial Tao Prime Body was silent. If Monk Daming had not sacrificed himself and destroyed one of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's clones, the outcome of this battle would indeed be unpredictable. That's good too. Suddenly, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor smiled. "Since you made the move first to die before me, I'll follow you to the Netherworld to take a look as well. We'll fight again in hell." When he realized that the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was about to commit suicide, the martial Tao Prime Body arrived before the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor in a flash and captured his essence spirit. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor still had many secrets. Who was the one who created the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra? What was the cloning technique cultivated by the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor? What was the origin of that blood face mask? The martial Tao Prime Body wanted an answer to those secrets. The Tao Lord of Azura sect saber did not manage to slice the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's head into two. Instead, it bounced off the blood face mask. The person shuddered and the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor suddenly rose from the ground with his blood face mask. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor released a terrifying power and raised the broken saber in his hands, piercing it into the glabella of the Tao Lord of Azura sect. It was a fatal slash that killed the titular disciple of Azura sect right away. The entire process happened in a flash. Even when the titular disciple died, he could not understand how the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor who had lost his combat strength could suddenly kill him. When the martial Tao Prime Body saw that, he was finally certain of something. The bronze square tripod and blood face mask came from the upper world and descended at the same time 40,000 years ago. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor looked at the corpse of the titular disciple of Azura sect with a conflicted expression. He stood there for a long time before taking a deep breath and turning to leave. The martial Tao Prime Body continued browsing through the memories of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. Through those memories, the martial Tao Prime Body resolved many of his doubts. The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was indeed created by the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor with the secret skill of the Blood Vine race as the foundation. However, it was with the help of the living being in the blood face mask. The living being in the blood face mask had given the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor a lot of help in the latter's cultivation. Later on, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was hunted by the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend Daos and no one helped him. If not for the blood face mask, he would have died a long time ago. Through the memories of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, the martial Tao Prime Body saw the monk Daming of the past as well. The two of them were mortal enemies. However, in the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's heart, Monk Daming was his only confidant. That was because among all the cultivators, Monk Daming was the only one who was willing to give him a chance. In the final battle, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor seized the opportunity to fake his death and escape under the suggestion of the blood face mask to cultivate another fiend technique. This was the cloning technique imparted to the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor by the blood face mask, the Three Corpses technique. Su Zimo had also heard Night Spirit mention this cloning technique before. It was said that it was ranked alongside the three pures of the immortal sects and the three bodies of the Buddhist monasteries. However, the Martial Dao Prime Body could not find the background of the blood face mask even after reading the memories of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor. The living being in the blood face mask had never mentioned it either. Initially, the Martial Dao Prime Body wanted to kill the essence spirit of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor directly. However, he hesitated for a moment and suddenly became curious about the blurry memories of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor when he was young. The Martial Dao Prime Body returned once more and peeled back the threads. The memories were revealed bit by bit. After the scenes flashed before his eyes, the expression of the Martial Dao Prime Body gradually turned complicated. Bastard! How dare you disobey my orders? A tender face was trampled viciously by a Blood Vine clansman into the mud and crushed continuously. The Blood Vine clansman looked down and stepped on the young man's cheek, saying coldly, "You're a bastard and your mother is a slut. Don't scold my mother." Although the young man was trampled beneath and his face was buried in the ground with his mouth filled with mud, he grit his teeth and said with a furious expression, "Foo-foo." The Blood Vine clansman sneered, "Your mother seduced random men outside and gave birth to you. You guys are the shame of the Blood Vine race." As he cursed, the Blood Vine clansman pushed the young man's face into the mud. A group of Blood Vine clansmen stood around and mocked brazenly as they watched the show. The Martial Dao Prime Body suddenly understood why the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor killed the entire Blood Vine race without exception. When the Martial Dao Prime Body saw those memories, the essence spirit of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor suddenly became agitated and wanted to break free from the restraints of the Martial Dao Prime Body. Those were the secrets in the depths of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's heart. Given the pride of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, he would definitely not mention such an experience to anyone. Chapter 1773, End of an Era. Chapter 1773, End of an Era. The Martial Dao Prime Body continued browsing through the memories of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor and witnessed everything. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was bullied in the Blood Vine race and any Blood Vine clansman could punch, kick and shout at him. Under such circumstances, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor grew bit by bit. There was only a single reason why he did not leave: his mother was imprisoned in the Blood Vine race. Later on, the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor watched helplessly as his mother was forced to her death by the Blood Vine clansman while he was helpless. Before her death, Blood Fiend's mother was worried that her child would continue to be bullied in the clan. Therefore, she asked Blood Fiend to leave the Blood Vine race and look for her father. Blood Fiend escaped from the Blood Vine race and vanished silently. Nobody in the Blood Vine race cared about his life or death, nor did anyone look for him. Blood Fiend arrived at Azura sect in Tianhuang mainland according to the information left behind by his mother. At that point, the Martial Dao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat as he recalled the initial scene and a terrifying possibility. After Blood Fiend joined Azura sect and cultivated diligently, he finally found an opportunity to meet that person. The titular disciple of Azura sect. The first person that the Martial Dao Prime Body saw Blood Fiend kill was his father. There was no warm scene when the father and son met. Instead, an intense argument broke out. At that time, the Azura had almost forgotten that he was once on good terms with a woman of the Blood Vine race and was indifferent towards the existence of Blood Fiend. "Your mother was only one of my women," the Azura of that generation said indifferently. I was merely playing around with her. She can't be considered as my Dao companion at all, everything was just for fun. Furthermore, after such a long time, who knew what other men she was having affairs with before you were born? Unable to hold it in any longer, Blood Fiend attacked the Azura of that generation, causing a huge battle to break out. After that was the scene that the martial Dao Prime body first saw. Blood Fiend was bullied when he was young and his heart was already twisted after losing his mother and father. Later on, he was hunted down by countless cultivators and was born as the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor who caused multiple catastrophes in the future. Suddenly, the essence spirit of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor released an extremely intense resistance. Those memories were the last thing he wanted to face and recall. Given the pride of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, he was definitely not willing to let a second person know about those secrets. Crack. 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 In the ball of light, cracks appeared on the pitch-black chains that coiled around the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor's essence spirit. They were about to be broken. Nobody can kill me, not even you, desolate Marshal. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor suddenly broke free from the chains and growled with a menacing and pained expression. Boom! The essence spirit of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor self-destructed and shattered, turning into nothingness in the palm of the Martial Dao Prime body. Actually, as long as the Martial Dao Prime body closed his palm and channeled his spirit consciousness to suppress the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor once more, he could control the latter. In fact, he could even kill the essence spirit of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor with ease. However, the Martial Dao Prime body did not bother. After reading those memories, he chose to give the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor a chance to commit suicide and leave him with some dignity. The Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor died without a trace. His corpse turned into blood that splashed onto Tianhuang mainland as well. Blood Fiend had never experienced any parental love, kinship or friendship. In the past, he was only bullied, humiliated, unjustly mocked and hunted. It was because of those experiences that the cruel and merciless Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor was born later on. The reason why Monk Daming was willing to give the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor a chance might be because he knew about the latter's past. Su Zimo looked at the void in silence with a conflicted expression and lamented internally. Although they were both remnants of the primordial races and were abandoned, Blood Fiend and Monk Daming walked two completely different paths. Both of them were peerless geniuses. Blood Fiend created the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and orchestrated multiple catastrophes in secret. In a certain sense, everything for the past 40,000 years had been under the rule of Blood Fiend, the primordial races were no exception. Every single living being in Tianhuang mainland was merely his chess piece. The ambitions of Blood Fiend were truly terrifying. He wanted to assimilate all the living beings of Tianhuang mainland into a race. If not for Dai Yu's appearance, Blood Fiend would have succeeded more than 1,000 years ago and no one would have been able to stop him. Monk Daming was even more admirable. He endured 40,000 years in that ancient coffin alone. The suffering he endured for the past 40,000 years was unimaginable. In the end, Monk Daming chose to turn into a fiend and break out of his coffin. Later on, he found a way to dispel the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and break free from the shackles of Blood Fiend. Actually, the fight between the two of them had lasted for 40,000 years and only just ended. With the death of the Blood Refinement Fiend Emperor, the remaining emperors were nothing to worry about. Before long, all of them died under the attack of the Martial Dao Prime body. The storyteller came to Su Zimo's side and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. He looked at the damaged battlefield and sighed softly. It's finally over. Martial Emperor, I once said that the ancient era belonged to the human emperor. This era belongs to you. No. Su Zimo shook his head. Why? The storyteller said, you established the martial Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings, uncovered the truth of the primordial era and suppressed the emperors of the primordial races so that the 10,000 races can coexist. Now, you've resolved the blood fiend catastrophe that lasted for 40,000 years. Such merits will naturally be left in the history books for everyone to admire. Su Zimo shook his head gently. This is not my era alone. In this era, there's Night Spirit, Lin Xuanji, the Dragon Race, the Emperors of the Human Race, and you, Senior. It's because of you guys that such a magnificent era was created. The storyteller smiled. No matter what, your contributions in this generation are unparalleled. Su Zimo sighed. No matter how great my contributions are, they can't outshine Monk Daming's brilliance. The storyteller was silent. If this generation was mentioned in the future, the first people to be mentioned would be the Martial Emperor, Monk Daming and Blood Fiend. In the ancient era, the human emperor reigned supreme alone. However, in this generation, the Martial Emperor, Monk Daming and Blood Fiend left indelible marks and shone with their own brilliance. Is there truly reincarnation in this world? Suddenly, Su Zimo asked. The storyteller said, reincarnation only exists in the legends. A power like that will probably only exist in the upper world, I guess. Su Zimo whispered, if there's reincarnation, I hope that Monk Daming can still be a human in his next life and obtain better karma. The deaths of Monk Daming and the blood refinement fiend emperor also meant the end of an era. Su Zimo would not stay in Tianhuang mainland for long either, as he would attempt Tribulation Transcendence to ascend soon. In the future, Tianhuang mainland would welcome a brand new era where the martial Tao flourished and the 10,000 races coexisted. Chapter 1774, Farewell. Chapter 1774, Farewell. After the end of the Battle of Blood Fiend, Tianhuang mainland finally welcomed a long-awaited period of peace. The 10,000 races recuperated and recovered their vitality in a peaceful manner. For the past 40,000 years, due to the baptism of many calamities in Tianhuang mainland, coupled with the endless fighting in the cultivation world, countless sects lost their legacies. Among the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects alone, some super sects were destroyed. As for those sects, they left behind some seeds that began to establish new sects in Tianhuang mainland to take in disciples. After pondering for a long time, Su Zimo did not choose to leave the subsequent cultivation techniques of the martial Tao on Tianhuang mainland. It was not that he could not bear to. It was just that even he did not know if this Tao would work and what the future would be like. It was enough to inherit the 9 transformations of the martial Tao. For mortals without spirit roots, as long as they could cultivate to the 6th transformation of the 9 transformations of the martial Tao, they could cultivate any Tao techniques of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects and had a bright future ahead. However, the path ahead of the martial Tao was dark. Only the martial Tao prime body had the determination and will to travel alone. Of course, as Su Zimo's eldest disciple, Baiming Xue was still summoned to his side to make her choice. Without hesitation, Baiming Xue chose the unknown future of the martial Tao. Su Zimo did not hide anything and imparted the essence of the martial Tao, including the latest Fate Ring secret ground, to Baiming Xue. In the following period of time, Su Zimo was in no hurry to leave. Instead, he gathered with many old friends and bid farewell to them one by one. The capital of Great Zhou. A woman in a pale yellow dress stood in front of the stone steps of the palace with elegant green-robed scholars beside her. The two of them chatted casually, exchanging glances and smiles from time to time. After more than 1,000 years, the appearance of the woman and the scholar did not change much. The woman looked at the scholar with the same gentleness as before. However, both their statuses had undergone a tremendous change. Right now, the woman was the empress of the Great Zhou Empire, the most noble person in the North region. Although her cultivation was not high and she was only at the Void Reversion realm, her status was comparable to the sect masters of the North region and even the super sects of Tianhuang mainland. The scholar was no longer the little cultivator who was hunted down everywhere in the past. Instead, he was the eternal martial emperor who was respected by the 10,000 races and was renowned throughout the world. Of course, no matter how noble the empress was, she could not stand shoulder to shoulder with the emperor cultivators. Let alone the eternal martial emperor. If anyone were to see the eternal martial emperor standing shoulder to shoulder with the empress of Great Zhou in the palace and smiling, they would definitely be shocked. Although the identity of the woman and the scholar had changed significantly, there was no barrier between them when they interacted. "Are you leaving?" Turning to look at the scholar's side profile, Ji Yaoxue smiled and asked softly. "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. Ji Yaoxue smiled. "Go to the upper world. There are still people waiting for you there." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he turned to look at Ji Yaoxue with a conflicted expression. "In truth, I've thought about what that person will be like. The one whom you can't forget and often dream about." With a relaxed expression, Ji Yaoxue teased, "It was only when she appeared that I understood. Even I would fancy such a peerless woman who looks down on the world." Initially, Su Zimo's heart felt heavy. However, when he saw Ji Yaoxue's smile, the sadness in his heart faded slightly. Ji Yaoxue reached out and patted Su Zimo on the shoulder gently. "All right, don't be like this. It's not like we're going to part forever. Once you reach the upper world, cultivate well and come back to visit me, and other old friends if you have the chance." Su Zimo was silent. Once he was in the upper world, it was almost impossible for him to descend again. The human emperor had ascended for countless years. Even with his cultivation, he nearly died when he forcefully descended. It would take countless years for Su Zimo to surpass the human emperor. The lifespan of a void reversion was only 5,000 years. At that time, even if he possessed the strength to descend to the lower world, everything would have changed. Furthermore, everything in the upper world was unknown and dangerous. Su Zimo knew that there was a high chance that this farewell would be forever. "Yaoxue." Su Zimo lowered his head and spoke gently, as though he wanted to say something. Ji Yaoxue pursed her lips and looked at Su Zimo quietly with a hint of anticipation in her eyes. After a long silence, Su Zimo sighed internally. "I'm leaving. Take care." "You too." Ji Yaoxue said softly. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo did not think further and turned to leave. Before long, he disappeared above the Great Zhou's palace. Ji Yaoxue stood on the spot and looked in the direction where Su Zimo left. She could no longer suppress the reluctance and sadness in her heart, and her vision gradually blurred. Someone is waiting for him in the upper world, but isn't it the same in the lower world? Right then, a voice sounded from behind Ji Yaoxue. Ji Yaoxue looked a little flustered as she wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes hurriedly, as though she was afraid that her thoughts might be exposed. Thereafter, she turned back. Not far away, a slender girl in pink stood. After all these years, Demoness Ji did not seem to have grown up and still looked like a young girl. However, she was filled with an irresistible charm. "Yenner, what are you talking about?" Ji Yaoxue said. Demoness Ji replied, "Sister, I know you the best. You don't seem to care, but you can't bear to." Ji Yaoxue was silent. A long time later, she said softly, "So what if he can't bear to? He wants to ascend to the upper world and will probably never meet again. Yenner, when are you going to attempt Tribulation Transcendence to ascend?" Ji Yaoxue changed the topic and suddenly asked. "I haven't become an empress yet, it's still early." Demoness Ji smiled and came to Ji Yaoxue's side. She held the latter's arm and smiled. "I can still accompany you for many years, unlike that heartless person." "You." Ji Yaoxue smiled and extended her finger, tapping Demoness Ji on the forehead gently. Sister, you don't have to be sad. Demoness G continued, I'll take you to watch him undergo tribulation transcendence a while later. At that time, he'll definitely be struck by the heavenly tribulation badly and his soul might even dissipate. We'll take that as revenge for you. Ah. Ji Yaoxue was shocked and asked hurriedly, is tribulation transcendence that dangerous? At that point, Demoness Ji turned serious as well and retracted her smile. Tribulation transcendence is indeed extremely dangerous and there's a high chance of death. In the ancient books of the Fiend sects, there are many examples of failed tribulations. Actually, over the years, many people in Tianhuang mainland could have chosen to undertake the tribulation transcendence. However, no one dared to take the risk. This time round, all the living beings of the 10,000 races know that the martial emperor will definitely choose to undergo the tribulation transcendence and ascend. Therefore, many experts are waiting to watch the martial emperor undergo the tribulation transcendence so that they can gain some experience. Chapter 1775, Tribulation Transcendence. Chapter 1775, Tribulation Transcendence. Cultivation was a heaven-defying act and every single step was difficult. Prior to this, although there would be immense danger for every major cultivation realm, it was difficult to call it a tribulation. The divine power tribulation would only descend when one entered the Mahayana realm. However, the divine power tribulation paled in comparison to the heavenly tribulation. Heavenly tribulations were the most difficult to pass through in the minor kiliacosms. If one could survive it, they could ascend to the upper world to become immortals. If they failed, there would only be a single outcome, dissipation of the soul. One had to endure the baptism of the heavenly tribulation if they wanted to cultivate against the heavens. In Tianhuang mainland, as long as a cultivator cultivated to the perfected Mahayana realm, they could choose to undergo tribulation transcendence even if they had not comprehended supreme divine powers to become emperors. In the ancient era, the founder master of Enigma Palace, Fairy Ling Long, did not comprehend supreme divine powers but underwent tribulation transcendence to ascend. When cultivators cultivated to the perfected Mahayana realm, all they had to do was release their spirit consciousness to break through the barrier of this minor kiliacosm and they would attract the heavenly tribulation. From the primordial era till now, there were very few cultivators who dared to trigger the heavenly tribulation at the perfected Mahayana realm because it was too dangerous. Even many emperors could not survive the heavenly tribulation. Su Zimo had once read in Enigma Palace that Fairy Ling Long experienced immense danger during her tribulation transcendence as well. If not for Fairy Ling Long's unparalleled divination skills and magnificent attainments in array formations, she would not have been able to survive. More importantly, one could only rely on their own strength for the tribulation transcendence. If anyone else helped, that person would be implicated and many variables would arise for the tribulation transcendence. Those were the precious experiences left behind by those who underwent tribulation transcendence in the ancient era. However, no matter how precious those experiences were, they could not compare to the fact that many experts could witness a person's tribulation transcendence process personally. It could be said that the martial emperor's tribulation transcendence was the center of attention. Many experts of Tianhuang mainland only knew one thing: the martial emperor would definitely undergo the tribulation transcendence. However, the martial emperor had 3 true bodies and nobody knew how he would choose to attempt the tribulation transcendence. If I were the martial emperor, I would choose to use one of my true bodies to undergo the tribulation transcendence as a test. The other 2 true bodies can also see what happens during the process. That's right. Even if he fails the tribulation transcendence, he still has 2 true bodies. By absorbing experience, those 2 true bodies might be able to think of a way to dispel it. During this period of time, the experts of the 10,000 races had been discussing the martial emperor's tribulation transcendence with different opinions. This day, a voice suddenly sounded and spread to every corner of Tianhuang mainland. I'm Desolate Martial. 10 days later, I'll undergo the Tribulation Transcendence in the East Sea. Everyone, you can head over to take a look. Tianhuang mainland was shaken. Swoosh. 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 Instantly, countless figures soared into the skies from all over Tianhuang mainland and sped towards the East Sea. Some of the figures had lower cultivation realms and were only at the Dharma characteristic or conjoint body realm. Unlike Mahayana patriarchs, they could not tear through the void to descend upon the East Sea right away. Therefore, those cultivators set off immediately for the East Sea. Although the Dharma characteristic and conjoint body realms were still extremely far from Tribulation Transcendence, no one wanted to miss this opportunity. Which true body do you think the Martial Emperor will attempt Tribulation Transcendence with first? I'm guessing the Dragon Phoenix true body. After all, the Dragon Phoenix is a taboo. He has a higher chance for the Tribulation Transcendence and might be able to deal with changes. I'm guessing it's the Green Lotus true body. After all, it's an utmost treasure of the universe. For the past 10 days, a large number of cultivators gathered around the East Sea. Apart from some cultivators, there were also experts of the 10,000 races discussing. Among them, there were many familiar faces: Monkey, the Spirit Tiger, Ching Ching, Night Spirit, Little Fox and the Golden Lion were naturally among them. Nian Qi had also rushed over from God's mainland and stood shoulder to shoulder with Tao Yao. In front of her old friends, she did not have the slightest bit of arrogance as the God Empress. Bai Ming Shui and the Kuan Peng had arrived as well. Consort Yu, the Azura and Extreme Fire were in the crowd too. Lin Xuanji, Ming Zhen, Little Fatty, Shi Jian and the others stood together. The emperors of the human race and the various races tore through the void and descended on the East Sea as well. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Suddenly, 3 cracks appeared above the East Sea and 3 figures with powerful auras walked out. Su Zimo's 3 true bodies descended at the same time. The 3 true bodies stood far apart and looked up at the firmaments with calm expressions. Everyone's gazes were focused on Su Zimo's 3 true bodies nervously. Suddenly, Lin Xuanji frowned and asked softly, "Old man, did Brother Su say which true body would attempt the Tribulation Transcendence first?" No. The storyteller had a grim expression as well. From the looks of it, there's a high chance that the Martial Emperor is going to undergo Tribulation Transcendence with 2 true bodies. Suddenly, Su Zimo's 3 true bodies released their terrifying spirit consciousnesses at the same time and surged into the skies, breaking through the clouds and striking the barrier of the Tianhuang mainland. Pust! Everyone was shocked and in an uproar. How dare the Martial Emperor? The Martial Emperor is way too conceited. What if? The Martial Emperor sure is bold to attempt Tribulation Transcendence with 3 true bodies at the same time. Instantly, a commotion broke out in the crowd. Even the storyteller's heart skipped a beat as he thought to himself, this is a little reckless. As everyone discussed, dark clouds filled the skies above the East Sea in the blink of an eye. They were pitch black and 3 massive clouds hovered above the heads of the 3 true bodies. Boom! 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 Wild winds howled above the East Sea and lightning flashed as thunder rumbled within the black clouds. The 3 black clouds covered the skies and emitted a tremendous divine might that terrified the living beings of the 10,000 races. The experts of the 10,000 races had long fled far away and were almost standing on the mainland, looking at the East Sea from afar. They did not dare to advance, afraid that they would be implicated by the heavenly tribulation. Everyone could see clearly that of the 3 clouds, the cloud above the Martial Tao prime body was clearly larger. The clouds above the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were similar in size. The 3 black clouds spun slowly and gradually turned into a gigantic vortex. Faint red electric arcs began to flash from the clouds and gathered towards the center of the vortex with a terrifying power. The cultivators were shocked and they saw the red lightning. It's red lightning. Did you think that the heavenly tribulation would be an ordinary lightning tribulation? This heavenly tribulation contains a destructive power and has long undergone a qualitative change. Ordinary lightning was colorless or white. However, the current heavenly tribulation was red. The heavenly tribulation was about to descend. The center of the black cloud vortex shone with a blinding red light that reflected thousands of kilometers and illuminated the mountains and rivers. The entire world seemed to be covered in blood. Crack! Almost at the same time, a red thunderbolt descended from the center of the three black clouds and struck Su Zimo's three true bodies. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body stood with their heads raised and burning gazes. They looked at the descending heavenly tribulation and did not use any methods to defend. What is the martial emperor doing? Why isn't he releasing any dharmic treasures or divine powers to defend against the heavenly tribulation? Could it be that the martial emperor wants to use his body to withstand the power of the heavenly tribulation? The crowd was in shock. In the blink of an eye, two red heavenly tribulations descended on the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body. However, the two true bodies were different and red lightning coiled around their bodies with crackling sounds. The two true bodies withstood the heavenly tribulation unscathed. On the other side, the martial Tao prime body looked at the descending heavenly tribulation and was even more domineering. He reached out and grabbed the heavenly tribulation, squeezing it. Boom! The heavenly tribulation exploded in the palm of the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 1776, 4 of 9 Heavenly Tribulation. Chapter 1776, 4 of 9 Heavenly Tribulation. Su Zimo's three true bodies underwent tribulation transcendence at the same time. Against the impact of the heavenly tribulation, the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body chose to take the first lightning tribulation head-on with their bodies to sense the power within. As for the martial Tao prime body, he was even more domineering and took the initiative to crush the lightning tribulation. Only through the actual tribulation transcendence can one understand the obscurities within. Apart from the massive power of thunder, there was also a mysterious power within the lightning tribulation. It was that power that caused the lightning in the black clouds to transform into a terrifying heavenly tribulation. At that moment, the bodies of the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body endured the baptism of the first lightning tribulation. Lightning flashed and coiled around their bodies. The power of thunder in the lightning tribulation gradually dissipated and the remaining strange power seeped into their bodies through their skin. That strange power was also changing his two true bodies. It's heaven and earth essence chi. A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. A few years ago, when Daiyu descended, she mentioned some things about the upper world to him. Among them, there was the mysteriousness of heaven and earth essence chi. After fusing with heaven and earth essence chi, lesser divine powers could transform and evolve into an even more terrifying power that could destroy Su Zimo's supreme divine power. Right now, the reason why the thunder transformed into a lightning tribulation was definitely because it was infused with heaven and earth essence chi. At the same time, a realization flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Although tribulation transcendence was dangerous, it was a threshold that cultivators of the lower world had to cross. In the minor kiliacosms, one could only come into contact with heaven and earth essence chi through tribulation transcendence to baptize their flesh and essence spirit before transforming once more. That way, cultivators of the lower world would be able to adapt to the environment of the upper world. Only cultivators who underwent tribulation transcendence could absorb heaven and earth essence chi from the upper world to cultivate. The martial Tao prime body crushed the heavenly tribulation and the lightning dissipated in his palm. However, the heaven and earth essence chi within surged into the body of the martial Tao prime body and baptized his flesh. The martial Tao prime body closed his eyes slightly and sensed the slight changes in his body. When the red heavenly tribulation descended earlier on, I could still feel a sense of trepidation despite being so far away. How terrifying! An emperor sighed gently. To think that such a terrifying heavenly tribulation would be nothing to the martial emperor. How can tribulation transcendence be that simple? There are 9 lightning tribulations and each one is fiercer than the last. This is only the beginning. Actually, if it was just a single lightning tribulation, many emperors throughout history would be able to withstand it no matter what with all their trump cards, methods and dermic treasures. However, most emperors who failed their tribulation transcendence died in the later lightning tribulations. Most emperors could not defend against the impact of the heavenly tribulation and their souls were dispersed after their trump cards were exhausted. Many emperors refused to undergo the tribulation transcendence for a long time because they wanted to comprehend as many supreme divine powers as possible. That was because every single supreme divine power could defend against an additional lightning tribulation. The skies above the East Sea. The dark clouds were even lower and thicker. Blazing red electric currents intertwined in the dark clouds and gathered towards the center of the black cloud vortex. Crack! A dark red lightning tribulation descended from the skies and smashed toward Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. The color of the lightning tribulation was much darker than before and the power it emitted was even more terrifying. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body did not move still and welcomed the baptism of the heavenly tribulation with their bodies. Apart from heaven and earth essence chi, there was also a forceful power of thunder in the heavenly tribulation. That baptism made the flesh of his 2 true bodies even stronger. To begin with, lightning contained life force and the essence of heaven and earth, all of that was a great tonic for Su Zimo. Of course, no one else could imitate this method of tribulation transcendence. The martial Dao prime body was still as domineering as ever. Against the descending lightning tribulation, he punched in reverse and shattered the dark red lightning tribulation. Under countless gazes, the lightning tribulations descended time and again. The colors turned darker, dark red, blood red and scarlet. The power of the lightning tribulations became increasingly terrifying as well. Even the emperors who were watching from afar felt shudders. The 2 true bodies did not move at all as they endured the baptism of the lightning tribulations. Not only were they not injured, their auras became stronger instead. The way the martial Dao prime body attempted the tribulation transcendence was even more violent and direct. Initially, he was still standing in midair and raising his hand to defend against the lightning tribulations. However, at the 7th, 8th and 9th tribulations, the martial Dao prime body rose against the tide and charged towards the heavenly tribulations. Boom! 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 The moment the 9th lightning tribulation descended, the martial Dao prime body had already arrived beneath the black cloud. He raised his fist and punched towards the lightning vortex in the center of the black cloud, shouting, "Break!" Boom! The lightning cloud was shattered by a single punch from the martial Dao prime body and dissipated everywhere. The martial Dao prime body stood beneath the firmaments like an unparalleled god. In less than an hour, all 9 lightning tribulations were past. Su Zimo's 3 true bodies were safe and sound. To think that the most dangerous 8th and 9th tribulations would be passed by the martial emperor so easily. This method of tribulation transcendence is truly unprecedented. The living beings of the 10,000 races lamented. Although the tribulation transcendence was over, Su Zimo's 3 true bodies did not leave and no phenomenon descended from the firmaments. According to the ancient books, a milky white beam of light would descend upon the tribulation transcendence cultivator and guide him to the upper world. However, after the 9 lightning tribulations ended, the pressure released by the firmaments became even more terrifying, as though a calamity had descended. What's going on? Didn't the martial emperor succeed in his tribulation transcendence? The living beings of the 10,000 races became restless. Could it be? Lin Xuanji's heart skipped a beat as he turned to the storyteller with a questioning expression. The storyteller nodded with a grim expression. In that case, the legend of the heavenly tribulation is true. What legend? The emperors asked curiously. The major sects were not the only ones without much concrete records of the heavenly tribulation, even Enigma Palace only had some legends. The storyteller said, legend has it that there are 9 heavenly tribulations. We know about that. Isn't it the 9 lightning tribulations? An emperor continued. The storyteller shook his head. The 9 is not referring to the 9 lightning tribulations, but 9 heavenly tribulations. What? The emperors were shocked. Long Ren asked, you mean to say that there are 9 of such heavenly tribulations? The storyteller nodded before shaking his head. As far as we know, the 9 lightning tribulations we saw earlier on could only be considered as the first level of the heavenly tribulation. In other words, it can be referred to as the one of 9 heavenly tribulation. However, if any monster incarnate is born in the world and the heavens are jealous, there's a chance that a second heavenly tribulation will be triggered. There will still be 9 lightning tribulations in the second heavenly tribulation, and that will be known as the 2 of 9 heavenly tribulation. The eternal human emperor once attracted the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Not many people in Enigma Palace knew about this, let alone others. The storyteller paused for a moment and said slowly, legend has it that the limit of the lower world is the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Up till now, there has never been such a heavenly tribulation in Tianhuang mainland. Chapter 1777, Rebirth. Chapter 1777, Rebirth. Although the 9 lightning tribulations were over, the dark clouds in the firmaments had not dispersed completely and were still spiraling above Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. They were dark and heavy, containing some terrifying power. Before long, the dark clouds changed, and in the blink of an eye, another 3 thick clouds formed above Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. The clouds were even more terrifying than before, as though ink could drip out. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the clouds, filled with a murderous intent that could devour and tear everything apart. The black clouds spun once more, and the endless power of thunder in the clouds began to gather towards the center of the vortex, causing the lightning to intensify. However, this time round, it was no longer a red lightning tribulation, but orange lightning. Streaks of lightning flashed in midair and burst forth with a bedazzling golden light. This had completely surpassed the lightning tribulation that many experts had imagined, to think that there was the power of orange lightning in this world. In the center of the black cloud vortex, there seemed to be a blazing sun that shone with golden light and was surrounded by countless lightning. The 2 of 9 heavenly tribulation had arrived. Suddenly, a blinding golden lightning tribulation burst forth from the center of the 3 black cloud vortexes, and countless electric arcs intertwined. The lightning tribulation descended from the skies like a towering ancient tree and smashed toward Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body did not release any divine powers or secret skills nor dermic treasures, prepared to take the 2 of 9 heavenly tribulation head-on with their bodies. The Martial Dao Prime body had a calm expression and took the initiative to attack the lightning tribulation just like earlier on. Boom! A loud bang sounded when the golden lightning tribulation struck the 2 true bodies. A terrifying power struck the 2 true bodies and sent them flying, almost falling from midair. The crowd stirred. Su Zimo's 2 true bodies were not injured at all against the final tribulation of the 1 of 9 heavenly tribulation. To think that the first tribulation of the 2 of 9 heavenly tribulation would send Su Zimo's 2 true bodies flying. On the other side, the Martial Dao Prime body was still as domineering as ever. He did not use any methods and shattered the golden lightning tribulation with a single punch. The heaven and earth essence chi contained by the lightning tribulation gradually fused into the body of the Martial Dao Prime body. The martial Tao prime body's heart skipped a beat as he smelted it with the martial Tao furnace. Sensing the power of the lightning tribulation, a glint flashed through his eyes as though he was enlightened. Cough, cough. Su Zimo's two true bodies stood up slowly and gasped. Although the Dragon Phoenix true body was a taboo and the Green Lotus true body was an utmost treasure of the universe, it was still far from the martial Tao prime body right now. A powerful power of thunder interweaved within the two true bodies with a destructive aura. Both true bodies suffered some damage from that first lightning tribulation. However, his two true bodies had strong regeneration capabilities and his injuries healed in the blink of an eye with a surge of blood chi. There was no fear in Su Zimo's eyes. Instead, there was a flash of excitement. The power of this second heavenly tribulation was clearly much stronger than the first. This also meant that the heaven and earth essence chi produced by the second heavenly tribulation was even purer and richer. Dangers were accompanied by opportunities. The more benefits Su Zimo could obtain during the tribulation transcendence, the more likely he would be able to adapt and gain a foothold in the upper world. Boom! Boom! The second lightning tribulation descended and did not give the two true bodies any chance to catch their breaths. Splash! Two vibrations sounded from the two true bodies as well as their blood chi rumbled with the sound of tsunamis. Su Zimo did not dare to be careless and channeled his blood chi to fight the lightning tribulation head-on. Boom! 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 If he was careless, he would be washed away without a corpse left, even his body could not withstand it. Chapter 1778, Level 4 Fate Ring. Chapter 1778, Level 4 Fate Ring. The lightning waterfall descended in a blinding manner with electric arcs flashing and thunder rumbling. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body released divine powers and released countless dermic treasures and secret skills to defend. Boom! 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 With each collision, there would be a violent quake. The lightning waterfall shattered and the remaining pure heaven and earth essence chi surged into the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body, fusing into every single inch of their flesh. Both true bodies transformed rapidly and their auras rose continuously. The lightning waterfall of the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation became increasingly violent as well. After being shattered once, it could be condensed once more in the blink of an eye and descend from the skies once more. It was like a galaxy pummeling down from the 9 heavens and was extremely spectacular. Under the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation, the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were almost forced to their limits. On the other side, the martial Tao prime body was forced to circulate his blood chi to defend against the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation. The only one who could stand against the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation was the martial Tao prime body. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were pushed down by the lightning waterfall countless times and were covered in injuries and fresh blood. At the final lightning tribulation, 2 of the Green Lotus true body's heads and 4 arms were crushed by the lightning waterfall. Right in front of everyone, the 2 true bodies fell time and time again. However, each time, they stood up and were bathed in lightning with a torrential aura. Finally, the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation dispersed. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were almost at their limits as well. Panting heavily, they channeled their blood chi and consumed a large number of elixirs to repair their injuries wildly. The 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation was still unable to pose a threat to the martial Tao prime body. Even after the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation, the clothes of the martial Tao prime body were not damaged. The martial Tao prime body closed his eyes slightly, as though he was sensing something. The storyteller looked up at the firmaments with a grim expression. Although the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation was over, the thunderclouds in the skies did not disperse and were still spiraling above Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. Could the martial emperor be attracting the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation? The storyteller frowned worriedly. Back then, the eternal human emperor merely attracted the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation and ascended to the upper world. If the 3 of 9 heavenly tribulation was already so terrifying, what about the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation? Su Zimo's Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body had already reached their limits after withstanding the 3 heavenly tribulations and had released all their supreme divine powers. If the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation were to descend right now, it would definitely be a destructive blow to the 2 true bodies. Boom! 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 Just as the storyteller was worried, the thunderclouds gathered once more in the firmaments. The color of the lightning tribulation changed once more. The green lightning tribulation turned into a blue lightning tribulation. However, this time round, the thunderclouds above the 3 true bodies no longer formed waterfalls. Instead, they formed a sea of lightning that tore through the voids like a tsunami with an endless might. Su Zimo reared his head and looked up. At that moment, his spirit perception warned him repeatedly. But now, when they saw that, the emperors who were already hesitant became even more fearful. Even from afar, they felt despair. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and looked at the sea of lightning above him with a burning gaze. There was no fear or intention to retreat in his eyes. Cultivation was a heaven-defying act to begin with. Without an indomitable spirit, how could one reach the peak? Even the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation was not much of a threat to the martial Tao prime body. For Su Zimo, the most important thing right now was how the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were going to survive the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Boom! The sound of thunder was deafening and even the experts watching from afar felt their hearts skip a beat. The thunder possessed the most righteous power that could crush all evil. The moment the thunder sounded, Su Zimo gained a new understanding of the sound domain's secret skill, Thunderclap Kill. However, he was undergoing Tribulation Transcendence right now and did not have time to think. Above the firmaments, a blue ocean poured down and drowned the 3 true bodies instantly. The blue ocean did not nurture seawater, but a blinding lightning tribulation that threatened to destroy all life. The lightning was blinding and filled the world. Many experts could no longer see Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. His 3 true bodies were devoured by the lightning tide. Is it going to end just like that? Even the 3 true bodies of the martial emperor could not survive the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. The living beings of the 10,000 races looked at everything in shock. Suddenly, a purple halo burst forth from the blue lightning tide. A figure appeared in the purple light. It was the martial Tao prime body. The emperors were sharp and could clearly see that there were 4 purple fate rings behind the martial Tao prime body that emitted powerful auras. Under the baptism of the heavenly tribulation, the martial Tao prime body broke through and entered level 4 of the fate ring realm, cultivating a 4th fate ring. The lightning tide surged. Under the protection of the 4 fate rings, the martial Tao prime body stood upright like a god among thunder. Roar! Suddenly, a deep roar filled with authority sounded from another lightning tide. In the blue lightning tide, a gigantic body gradually appeared. It was scarlet red and its scales were connected tightly with flames burning on them. It had wings on its back, a dragon's head and phoenix's tail and sharp claws. The Dragon Phoenix true body had already transformed into his true form to defend against the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Swoosh! The lightning tide surged. A streak of green broke through the tide and soared into the skies. The Green Lotus true body could not defend against it and released his bloodline phenomenon. In the lightning tide, a creation Green Lotus appeared and shone brightly as it bathed in electricity. Boom! From the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, the second lightning tide descended and was even more ferocious. The massive body of the Dragon Phoenix true body was almost drowned in the lightning tide as he roared in pain. His blood chi surged and lifelike demon kings appeared one after another around him. The Dragon Phoenix true body was forced to release his bloodline phenomenon as well. That was his final trump card. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was already at the perfected stage and 12 demon kings had appeared. Of course, without Daiyu's backing, the 12 demon kings would not transform or reconstruct her form. Even so, the 12 demon kings were not to be underestimated and surrounded the Dragon Phoenix true body to defend against the impact of the lightning tide. Against the impact of the second lightning tide, the creation green lotus swayed violently and its lotus platform lowered, almost drowning in the lightning tide. Boom! Before the second lightning tide ended, the third lightning tide had already descended. It was even more terrifying and earth-shaking. Chapter 1779, Death of the Green Lotus. Chapter 1779, Death of the Green Lotus. The lightning was shocking and surged like a tide, wanting to devour and shatter all life. A third lightning tide descended and cracks appeared on the 12 demon king phenomenons of the Dragon Phoenix true body. They were already on the verge of collapse. The situation on the side of the Green Lotus true body was even more dangerous. The phenomenon of the creation Green Lotus could no longer defend against it. Under the wash of the lightning tide, its leaves withered and lotus petals fell one after another. It turned into nothingness as the lightning tide surged. Boom! Boom! The fourth lightning tide arrived. Poof! 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 The 12 demon kings around the Dragon Phoenix true body dissipated instantly against the impact of the fourth lightning tide and were drowned in the sea of blue lightning. On the other side, the phenomenon of the creation green lotus dissipated as well. Su Zimo's figure reappeared and faced the gush of the lightning tide head-on. The one of 9 heavenly tribulation was nothing to the 2 true bodies and they could survive it with their bodies. However, this was the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Its strength had increased exponentially and was on a completely different level. When the 2 true bodies were exposed to the 4th lightning tide of the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, they instantly felt a pain that seeped into their bones. When the Dragon Phoenix true body transformed into his true form, his body was protected by countless tough scales. He was invulnerable to weapons, water and fire. However, blood began to ooze from the Dragon Phoenix true body under the blue lightning tide. Countless power of the lightning tribulation surged into the body of the Dragon Phoenix true body and destroyed his life force. The Green Lotus true body was in an even worse state. In terms of physique, the Green Lotus true body was still weaker than the Dragon Phoenix true body. Under the wash of the 4th lightning tide, the Green Lotus true body's hair was disheveled and his flesh was split open by the lightning. He was charred black and fresh blood splattered everywhere. It was unknown how much pain and damage he endured. Thankfully, the regeneration capabilities of the Green Lotus true body were shocking and his flesh was filled with endless life force, regenerating in the destruction and healing his injuries wildly. Boom! Boom! The 5th lightning tide descended. It was even more turbulent, terrifying and shocking. The Dragon Phoenix true body could barely stand still and the scarlet scales on his body fell off one after another under the wash of the lightning tide, stained with blood. Without the protection of his scales, the flesh of the Dragon Phoenix true body was completely exposed to the lightning and was mangled by it. However, the Dragon Phoenix true body was still trying his best to grit his teeth and persevere. His eyes seemed to be burning with 2 flames and his gaze was resolute. This was a calamity and an opportunity. As long as he could survive it, he would obtain an immense transformation and improvement. Only under the tempering of such a powerful heavenly tribulation could he possess a better foundation and establish himself in the upper world. The Green Lotus true body was covered in injuries from the lightning tribulation and his skin peeled off in large patches like cracked bark. The flesh of the Green Lotus true body was charred black by the lightning tide and smoke billowed. Ah! Although the Green Lotus true body was severely injured, he did not show any signs of defeat or fear. Instead, he roared into the skies and his essence spirit released his spirit consciousness powerfully on the Creation Lotus platform. The Creation Lotus platform spun continuously and released wisps of life force that nourished the flesh of the Green Lotus true body. Heavens! If the fifth lightning tribulation of the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation is already so powerful, what terrifying power will the subsequent lightning tribulations release? Even a single wisp of lightning from this lightning tide can turn us into ashes, let alone the terrifying lightning tide itself. An emperor muttered to himself with a shocked expression. The 2 true bodies of the martial emperor won't be able to survive. Another emperor sighed. Many experts, including the storyteller, could tell that the martial emperor had already reached his limits and there were 4 more lightning tides behind. Boom! Boom! Instantly, a 6th lightning tide descended. Bang! The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body were sent flying and drowned by the lightning tide, spilling a large amount of blood. The 2 true bodies floated in the lightning tide and the bones in their bodies crackled, almost shattered by it. The Green Lotus true body coughed out large mouthfuls of blood with a pale expression as he healed his injuries wildly. Boom! Boom! The 7th lightning tide arrived. Poof! The Dragon Phoenix true body shuddered and spat out a mouthful of blood. Under the impact of the 7th lightning tide, his organs were severely injured and his life force was almost destroyed. It was even worse on the side of the Green Lotus true body. His flesh was washed clean by the terrifying lightning tide, leaving only a jade-green human-shaped skeleton that was still floating. The bones of the Green Lotus true body were made from the Green Lotus stem of the past and shone with a crystalline glow like jade. He's not dead yet? The emperors were dumbfounded. The storyteller focused his gaze and saw that there was an essence spirit that emitted a divine light in the jade-green head. Under the baptism of the lightning tide, it became increasingly condensed. The martial emperor was still holding on. Boom! The 8th lightning tide swept over and created a torrential wave. The wings of the Dragon Phoenix true body were snapped and more than half of his bones were shattered. His flesh began to fall off gradually in the lightning tide and his life force drained gradually as well. He could not defend against it anymore. The Green Lotus true body was in an even worse state. The Green Lotus skeleton was dispersed by the lightning tide and merely hovered around the Creation Lotus platform under the control of the Green Lotus essence spirit. There was no chance of blood rebirth if one's body was destroyed in the lightning tide. All his flesh and blood would be destroyed by the lightning tide. Furthermore, the essence spirits of the 2 true bodies could not be saved against the lightning tide. The skull of the Green Lotus essence spirit was already shattered by the lightning tide, leaving only a Creation Lotus platform that emitted a resplendent glow. It was still protecting the essence spirit and trying its best to hold on. Everyone watched intently and forgot to breathe. Boom! Boom! The 9th lightning tide descended. The bones of the Dragon Phoenix true body shattered and his organs were ruptured. His life force drained and he could not defend against the baptism of the 9th lightning tide at all. Swoosh! A bronze square tripod that was 10 feet tall flew out from the glabella of the Dragon Phoenix true body and welcomed the lightning tide in the skies. Boom! The bronze square tripod collided with the lightning tide with a loud bang. The lightning tide dissipated and transformed into countless electric arcs that descended from the firmaments and coiled around the Dragon Phoenix true body. Roar! The Dragon Phoenix true body roared into the skies and stood up from the lightning tide. The most terrifying power of the 9th lightning tide had already been endured by the bronze square tripod and the remaining lightning was not enough to pose a threat to the Dragon Phoenix true body. The Dragon Phoenix true body was invigorated and condensed his blood chi once more. Countless thunderbolts tore through the world like thousands of divine dragons spiraling around him. Although the Dragon Phoenix true body looked miserable, he managed to survive with the bronze square tripod. It was different on the side of the Green Lotus true body. The Green Lotus true body threw out many dharmic treasures. Chapter 1780, 9 Heavens Living Soil. Chapter 1780, 9 Heavens Living Soil. Almost everyone thought that the Green Lotus true body had already died in the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Only the Martial Tao Prime Body and Dragon Phoenix True Body knew that the Green Lotus True Body was not dead. The 3 true bodies could sense one another. Both the Martial Tao Prime Body and Dragon Phoenix True Body could sense that the aura of the Green Lotus True Body was within the blinding lightning tide. However, even the Martial Tao Prime Body did not know how the Green Lotus True Body could survive the cleansing of the lightning tide. Suddenly, the Martial Tao Prime Body exclaimed softly. Even with the bronze square tripod, the Dragon Phoenix True Body nearly died against the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. Although he managed to survive, his aura was weak and he was almost dead. But now, the aura of the Green Lotus True Body was gradually rising. Something's not right. Right then, the storyteller noticed something unusual as well. He glared at the lightning tide in the distance and frowned. If the Green Lotus True Body is dead, the lightning tribulation should have dissipated. Why is it still surging? Everyone focused their gazes as well. In the blinding blue tide, a strange yellow light was faintly visible. Gradually, the yellow color became clearer. Everyone's eyes widened. In the lightning tide, a bare green lotus platform floated with Su Zimo's essence spirit sitting on it. Although the creation lotus platform was drowned by the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, the green lotus essence spirit did not die. Strange. An emperor said in a low voice, even the leaves of the creation green lotus withered from the impact of the lightning tide and its petals were shattered, leaving only a battered lotus platform. How can it protect the green lotus essence spirit? Look. Another emperor said, there seems to be a yellow barrier around the creation lotus platform, as though yellow sand is spreading around it. The strange yellow light that everyone saw earlier on was illuminated by the yellow sand. What is that? It can defend against the baptism of the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation? It looks very ordinary, like a pile of soil. The emperors had bewildered expressions. Even with their knowledge, they did not know what the yellow sand was. At that moment, even the spirit consciousness of the Martial Tao Prime Body could not penetrate the barrier of the yellow sand. In the lightning tide of the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, the Green Lotus True Body underwent the greatest transformation. Su Zimo's Green Lotus True Body had long grown to the peak of grade 8. Even after he obtained many opportunities later on and comprehended a supreme divine power like incinerating firmament boiling sea, the Green Lotus True Body showed no signs of breaking through. Su Zimo did not know how the creation Green Lotus should break through and grow to grade 9 either. During the Tribulation Transcendence process, the Green Lotus True Body was baptized by the lightning tribulation and infused with heaven and earth essence chi continuously. Finally, a qualitative change happened. The heavenly tribulation and heaven and earth essence chi were the key to the creation Green Lotus breaking through to grade 9. Under the repeated baptism of the heavenly tribulation, the flesh, tendons and bones of the Green Lotus True Body became flawless and condensed without any impurities. His essence spirit was even purer and brighter. Under such circumstances, the fusion of heaven and earth essence chi caused the creation Green Lotus to transform and break through to grade 9. The creation Green Lotus stole the creation of heaven and earth. Towards the end of its growth, there would be many mysterious aspects to each transformation. Back then, the grade 7 creation Green Lotus allowed Su Zimo to release dharmic arts continuously. The grade 8 creation Green Lotus contained many divine powers. At grade 9, the creation Green Lotus gave birth to an utmost treasure of the universe, the ordinary yellow soil that everyone saw. After the creation Green Lotus grew to grade 9, Su Zimo's Green Lotus Essence spirit obtained an incomplete memory as well. Many ancient races had inheritance memories. The creation Green Lotus was the only one of its kind in the world, and it was normal for it to have inheritance memories. This inheritance memory recorded the origin of the yellow soil. The yellow soil was not an ordinary object. It was called the Nine Heavens living soil and was the origin of the earth. It was extremely mysterious and possessed unparalleled defense, born from chaos. A portion of the living soil evolved into the Nine Heavens while the other portion gave birth to the creation Green Lotus. Although the Nine Heavens living soil was only a small handful, it could expand rapidly and transform endlessly. It was flexible, stable and invulnerable. Of course, that portion of the inheritance memories was incomplete. In order to know the mysterious usages of the Nine Heavens living soil, Su Zimo would have to try it himself. Now that the Green Lotus true body had grown to grade 9 and derived this utmost treasure, it transformed immediately and enveloped the surroundings of the creation Lotus platform, protecting Su Zimo's essence spirit within. Although the lightning tide outside surged, it was blocked by the Nine Heavens living soil. Within the Nine Heavens living soil, the initially bare creation Lotus platform began to emanate vitality. There were 81 Lotus holes in the middle of the Lotus platform. The Lotus holes spewed out rays of green light that filled the skies and repelled the surrounding lightning tide in a bedazzling manner. A moment later, the lightning tide gradually subsided. The thunderclouds in the skies gradually dispersed as well. The skies above the East Sea lit up once more. The dull and shuddering pressure dissipated as well, and the blue skies above the firmaments reappeared. All the living beings of the 10,000 races heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that it was over. The martial emperor's tribulation Transcendence attracted the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, and there were a total of 36 lightning tribulations. This scene would definitely be recorded in history. Under countless gazes, the creation Green Lotus grew once more from the Nine Heavens living soil. The lotus leaves were crystalline and gigantic lotus petals blossomed one after another, shimmering with light. Finally, the creation Green Lotus vanished and Su Zimo's figure appeared. Dressed in green robes, his black hair draped over his shoulders, and he had refined features. His aura had already turned unfathomable. Initially, the flesh of the grade 8 Green Lotus true body could not compare to the Dragon Phoenix true body. Among the 3 true bodies, the Green Lotus true body was also weaker in combat. But now that the Green Lotus true body had transformed to grade 9, his combat strength was definitely not weaker than the Dragon Phoenix true body. Of course, the greatest gain for the Green Lotus true body after it grew to grade 9 was still the Nine Heavens living soil. On the other side, the Dragon Phoenix true body relied on the bronze square tripod to barely survive. His body was severely injured and his essence chi was greatly injured as he tried his best to recover. The martial Tao prime body's tribulation Transcendence was the most peaceful and smooth. Even the final 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation did not pose much of a threat to the martial Tao prime body. Right then, 3 milky white beams of light descended from the firmaments, emitting a strange power that enveloped Su Zimo's 3 true bodies. Everyone watched in shock with fixed gazes. The milky white beam of light emitted powerful life force that surged into the Dragon Phoenix true body. The injuries of the Dragon Phoenix true body healed at a visible speed. In less than 10 breaths, the Dragon Phoenix true body recovered completely. At the same time, the 3 milky white beams of light possessed a powerful suction force and wanted to soar into the air with the 3 true bodies and ascend. The 3 beams of light seemed to be a passage that connected the upper and lower worlds. The Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body did not defend against that power and relax their bodies. They followed the suction force and rose slowly into the air under the gazes of the living beings of the 10,000 races, flying towards the unknown upper world. Chapter 1781, Divine Punishment. Chapter 1781, Divine Punishment. The Dragon Phoenix True Body and Green Lotus True Body transformed into two spots of light and disappeared at the end of the firmaments before long. The two milky white beams of light dissipated as well. When the experts of Tianhuang mainland retracted their gazes, they noticed something unusual. The third milky white beam of light still penetrated the world and enveloped the Martial Tao Prime Body. The Martial Tao Prime Body did not leave and continued standing in midair, looking up at the skies. What's the Martial Emperor's third true body doing? I'm not sure. He seems to be resisting the guidance of the upper world. Many experts discussed in shock. The milky white beam of light intensified and a powerful suction force acted on the Martial Tao Prime Body, wanting to take him away from Tianhuang mainland. However, the Martial Tao Prime Body remained unmoved. Both parties exerted strength and the Martial Tao Prime Body channeled his blood chi slowly. In the end, he even conjured a bloodline phenomenon, a gigantic furnace that burned furiously in midair to fight against the power of guidance. Before this Tribulation Transcendence, Su Zimo had already made his decision. The Dragon Phoenix True Body and Green Lotus True Body would undergo Tribulation Transcendence at the same time and ascend to the upper world. However, his Martial Tao Prime Body would choose to stay in Tianhuang mainland. Firstly, the sort of dangers and living beings he would encounter upon arriving in the upper world was completely unknown. If he left the Martial Tao Prime Body in Tianhuang mainland, he would not die even if the Dragon Phoenix True Body and Green Lotus True Body encountered any variables. One day, the Martial Tao Prime Body would still be able to ascend to the upper world. Secondly, Su Zimo had many old friends in Tianhuang mainland. For example, Xiaoning had only just entered the Mahayana realm. She would have to cultivate for a long time before she could attempt the Tribulation Transcendence. Su Zimo was the most worried about Xiaoning. Of course, apart from Xiaoning, there were also Monkey, Night Spirit and his siblings as well as bosom buddies like Little Fatty, Ji Chengtian, Leng Ro and Lin Xuanji. There was also Nian Qi and Tao Yao, his two disciples. With so many old friends still in Tianhuang mainland, Su Zimo would be worried if he were to leave right away. Third, Su Zimo wanted to sever some karma. What is the Martial Emperor thinking? Why is he resisting the guidance of the upper world? A commotion broke out in the crowd. He's probably worried about some old friends in Tianhuang mainland, someone guessed. Another person said, however, if that's the case, why bother to undergo the Tribulation Transcendence? Now that he has passed the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, he chose to defend against the guidance of the upper world. This is no longer heaven-defying. He's challenging the rules of the heavenly Tao. That's right. This is a dangerous move that might attract divine punishment. Tribulation Transcendence was a necessary step. The Martial Tao Prime Body could only continue cultivating after Tribulation Transcendence. Back when experts of the upper world descended, they were all killed by Dai Yu and left behind many treasures and cultivation resources. However, those treasures could not be refined and absorbed without experiencing the Tribulation Transcendence. The Martial Tao Prime Body wanted to continue cultivating in the lower world. Zimo, why are you doing this? In the crowd, a woman in a pale yellow robe looked at the figure above the East Sea and murmured worriedly. Sister, could he be staying for your sake? At the side, a girl in pink with a veil asked softly. The yellow-robed woman frowned and pursed her red lips. Her heart was completely focused on the person above the East Sea and she did not hear what the girl beside her was saying. The power of guidance was still increasing within the milky white beam of light. The Martial Tao Prime Body did not relax at all. After his bloodline phenomenon, 4 fate rings were released as well, forming 4 purple halos behind him that almost broke through the milky white column of light. The clash between the two powers was silent. However, everyone from Tianhuang mainland watched nervously with sweaty palms. That was because the void above the East Sea was twisting wildly, disintegrating and collapsing. it shattered against the confrontation of the two powers. "Old man, what will happen if Brother Su continues to resist?" Lin Xuanji could not help but ask. The storyteller had a grim expression as he said slowly, "Nobody knows what will happen. After all, something like this is unprecedented." After a brief pause, he sighed. "The martial emperor is going against the will of the heavens and challenging the rules of the heavenly Tao." Although the storyteller did not continue, Lin Xuanji's heart sank. He could tell that the storyteller was implying that Su Zimo's actions would probably attract trouble. Before long, the milky white light that pierced through the world gradually dissipated. The figure of the martial Tao prime body reappeared and stood on the East Sea. His face was a little pale but his gaze was still calm. This struggle consumed a lot of the martial Tao prime body as well. He had just passed through the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation and was almost exhausted after resisting the power of guidance from the upper world. Is it over? The guidance failed and gave up. It decided to allow the martial emperor to stay in the lower world. The living beings of the 10,000 races had different expressions. This scene seemed to be vastly different from what they had imagined. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the firmaments. An extremely terrifying might emanated from the crack with a chilling killing intent that threatened to destroy everything. Crack! There was a deafening bang. A purple thunderbolt descended from the skies and arrived instantly, descending on the martial Tao prime body. Everywhere the purple thunderbolt passed, the world was sliced into two. The living beings of the 10,000 races were shocked. The emperors were astounded. Nobody could describe the power of that purple thunderbolt. The might of the purple thunderbolt was far less shocking than the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. However, the combined power of the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation was far inferior to the killing power of the purple thunderbolt. The purple thunderbolt seemed to be a punishment from the heavens that wanted to destroy all living beings who wanted to challenge the will of the heavens and the rules of the heavenly Tao. It was too fast. The moment the purple light flashed, the purple thunderbolt had already landed on the martial Tao prime body. Boom! A series of blood lights burst forth from the purple light. Right in front of everyone, the martial Tao prime body was destroyed in body and soul by the purple thunderbolt without a corpse left. All the living beings who saw that widened their eyes and mouths instinctively. The emperors even forgot to breathe and froze on the spot. All the emperors had witnessed the strength of the martial Tao prime body before. Even the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation could not destroy the martial Tao prime body. However, the purple thunderbolt destroyed him with ease and shattered his soul. A moment later, the crack in the firmaments closed slowly. It was as though the purple thunderbolt earlier on was a hallucination of the living beings of the 10,000 races. However, above the East Sea, the figure that looked down on the world and history was completely destroyed by the purple thunderbolt and became a thing of the past. Sigh. Many experts shook their heads and sighed. The martial emperor has clearly succeeded in his tribulation transcendence, but he still wanted to provoke the heavens. It's truly a little. He can't blame anyone for his ending. No matter what, the two true bodies of the martial emperor succeeded in the tribulation transcendence and have already ascended to the upper world. At the very least, he managed to retain them. That's already quite a blessing. The living beings of the 10,000 races discussed and lingered around the East Sea for a long time. Some experts even wanted to search for the storage bag of the martial Tao prime body, but to no avail. Against that power, his storage bag should have turned into ashes. That was what many experts thought. Actually, the moment the purple thunderbolt descended on the martial Tao prime body, no one noticed that a silver light fell into the East Sea and vanished under the cover of the blazing purple light. Chapter 1782, Tribulation Fire. Chapter 1782, Tribulation Fire. As Su Zimo's two true bodies ascended, the martial Tao Prime Body was destroyed in body and soul by the purple divine punishment. The living beings of the 10,000 races lingered around the East Sea for a long time before dispersing. The martial emperor's ascension this time round had a huge impact on the living beings of the 10,000 races. Some living beings even chose to sit by the East Sea and comprehend the Tao. Some experts gave up on the thought of tribulation, transcendence and ascension completely. However, some people had even firmer Tao hearts. Nobody noticed that a silver light floated and fell into the depths of the East Sea. When Su Zimo underwent tribulation transcendence, no living being dared to linger in the vicinity of the East Sea that was enveloped by the tribulation clouds. Naturally, no living being in the depths of the sea discovered the existence of that silver light. It was a silver mask. The silver mask came from the upper world and landed on Tianhuang mainland at the same time as the bronze square tripod. Furthermore, there was a drop of sentient blood in the mask. It caused the mask to turn blood red. However, the drop of blood was imprisoned by the martial spirit fire and red lotus karmic fire of the martial Tao Prime Body, causing the mask to revert to its original appearance. Since the martial Tao Prime Body decided to disobey the will of the heavenly Tao, he had already expected a divine punishment or heavenly tribulation to descend. His combat strength was invincible in the lower world. However, a divine punishment as such could destroy him with ease. Therefore, the silver mask was the final trump card of the martial Tao Prime Body. When the divine punishment descended, the martial Tao Prime Body had already sensed that he could not defend against it. Therefore, the martial Tao Prime Body made a prompt decision and hid a drop of essence blood in the silver mask. Indeed, his body was struck into nothingness by the divine punishment. However, the silver mask fell into the depths of the sea unscathed against the divine punishment. At the bottom of the East Sea, a drop of essence blood suddenly flew out from the silver mask. A powerful divine power spread, and in the blink of an eye, the figure of the martial Tao Prime Body reappeared with a terrifying aura. Blood rebirth. Under normal circumstances, the heavenly Tao rules did not allow the power of the upper world to appear in the lower worlds. That was the reason why those who underwent tribulation transcendence would ascend to the upper world. Furthermore, it was difficult for experts of the upper world to descend as well. Even if they did, they would suffer immense punishment. However, what the martial Tao Prime Body did was equivalent to concealing the heavenly secrets and deceiving the world. The tribulation transcendence allowed heaven and earth essence Qi to baptize his flesh and essence spirit. While he obtained the power of the upper world, he stayed in the lower world. The existence of the martial Tao Prime Body was a variable to begin with. It was beyond the 3 realms and 5 elements. However, as long as the martial Tao Prime Body cultivated, he would leave behind traces in the lower world and enter the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, when the martial Tao Prime Body underwent tribulation transcendence, the heavenly Tao would sense it and send down a heavenly tribulation. This time round, the martial Tao Prime Body made use of the divine punishment to erase his traces once more and escape the cycle of the heavenly Tao. The martial Tao Prime Body had a calm expression as he picked up the silver mask casually and swiped his palm gently in front of him. A deep crack appeared in the depths of the sea, but the seawater could not surge in. The martial Tao Prime Body entered in a flash and disappeared into the depths of the East Sea. The crack closed, and before long, the bottom of the East Sea returned to normal. North Region, Pingyang Town. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the courtyard of Su Zimo's residence and the figure of the martial Tao Prime Body appeared, walking out slowly. Young Master. Not far away, an obedient and tender boy walked forward and called out softly with a delighted expression. The boy was Tao Yao. Tao Yao carried a storage bag and handed it to the martial Tao Prime Body, saying joyfully, "Young Master, here." The martial Tao Prime Body only told a single person about his decision, Tao Yao. Before the martial Tao Prime Body underwent the tribulation transcendence, he made some arrangements. He imparted the earth-slaying sword art to the green lotus true body and left behind the essence condensation elixirs and essence spirit stones from the experts of the upper world as well as the drop of imprisoned blood in a storage bag. In order to prevent any accidents, the martial Tao prime body handed his storage bag to Tao Yao for safekeeping. Indeed, the descent of the divine punishment almost destroyed everything. The body of the martial Tao prime body did not even have a corpse left. If he had his storage bag with him, it would have been destroyed a long time ago. The martial Tao prime body received the storage bag and his spirit consciousness moved, retrieving the drop of imprisoned blood within. At that moment, the cage formed by the martial spirit fire and red lotus karmic fire could not injure the foundation of that drop of blood and could only imprison it within. Who are you? The martial Tao prime body asked. What's the origin of this silver mask and the bronze square tripod? The drop of blood remained motionless in the cage without any response. Answer whatever I ask lest you suffer. The martial Tao prime body said blandly. Humph. When the drop of blood heard the threat of the martial Tao prime body, it finally could not help but sneer, your strength is not enough to threaten me. I'm the great Lord Heavenly Wolf. If you let me go now, I can even impart to you some cultivation techniques and secret skills that will last you a lifetime. If you continue to be stubborn, I'll definitely skin you alive and burn your bones into ashes when my master is born. Heavenly Wolf? The martial Tao prime body raised his brow slightly and asked, who is your master? My master is the great. Heavenly Wolf seemed to have realized something and shut its mouth hurriedly. The martial Tao prime body smiled indifferently. It's fine if you don't say it. I can let you try out the technique I just comprehended. As he said that, the martial Tao prime body channeled his essence spirit and pinched his fingertip, igniting a blue flame. The flame exuded a shuddering aura that seemed familiar. This was not a divine power. That aura was extremely similar to the heavenly tribulation that descended earlier on. What is that? Heavenly Wolf dodged and hollered. The martial Tao prime body said, this is a power I comprehended when I was undergoing tribulation transcendence. I call it the tribulation fire. Tribulation was an extremely special power and no one knew how it was born. Tribulation seemed to exist through the ages and coexisted with heaven and earth. There were all sorts of forms and they were everywhere. At the Mahayana realm, there was the divine power tribulation. There was a heavenly tribulation if one wanted to ascend. There might be other tribulations in the upper world. The 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation was not much of a threat to the martial Tao prime body. That was the reason why he could comprehend the origin of the heavenly tribulation while undergoing the tribulation transcendence and condense it in the form of flames. The heavenly tribulation descended in the form of lightning. As for the martial Tao prime body, he controlled a heavenly tribulation in the form of flames. In other words, if the martial Tao prime body wanted to, he could even replace the heavenly Tao and send down a heavenly tribulation on Tianhuang mainland right now. The power of the tribulation fire condensed by the martial Tao prime body right now was comparable to the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation. The level 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation was sky blue. Furthermore, as the cultivation of the martial Tao prime body advanced, the power of the tribulation fire would continue to increase. The martial Tao prime body tapped his fingertip gently and fused the sky blue tribulation fire into the flaming cage in midair. Apart from the martial spirit fire and the red lotus karmic fire, there was now another tribulation fire in the cage. Whoosh! The flames intensified. Ah! 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 Heavenly Wolf's tragic cries sounded in unbearable pain. Chapter 1783, Killing Intent of the Upper World. Chapter 1783, Killing Intent of the Upper World. When the 3 balls of flames burned and refined the drop of blood at the same time, Heavenly Wolf let out a tragic howl and could barely hold on. If it was just the power of the lower world, it would be difficult for the martial Tao prime body to threaten Heavenly Wolf no matter how many divine powers he comprehended or fused. That was the reason why Heavenly Wolf was fearless. But now, the martial Tao prime body underwent tribulation transcendence and fused with the heaven and earth essence Qi. While obtaining the power of the upper world, he deceived the world and made use of the divine punishment to erase his traces in the lower world, staying behind. The tribulation fire could already threaten Heavenly Wolf. As time passed by, the martial Tao prime body would fuse the heaven and earth essence Qi with the martial spirit fire and red lotus karmic fire, and the power of the two balls of flames would increase significantly. At that time, he would truly be burned to ashes. The martial Tao prime body had a calm expression and a deep gaze as he said coldly, "You joined forces with Blood Fiend and caused so many calamities in Tianhuang mainland. My patience with you is limited. That's none of my business." Heavenly Wolf shrieked, "I merely imparted some cultivation techniques to him and guided his cultivation. I've never participated in his actions." Although the martial Tao prime body remained silent, the flames in the cage intensified. Under the boundless starry skies, two milky white beams of light tore through the world and two figures flew towards the upper world rapidly. It was a mysterious sensation. Su Zimo felt as though he had passed through layers of barriers and was getting closer to the vast starry sky above him, flying towards another world. At that moment, the two true bodies showed no signs of separating and were not far apart. On the other side, under the healing of the milky white beam of light, the injuries of the dragon phoenix true body had already recovered. At that moment, he was holding the bronze square tripod and observing it carefully. After Su Zimo obtained the bronze square tripod, although he tried to refine it as his destiny dermic weapon, there was no reaction from it. Su Zimo could not use the bronze square tripod to release any divine powers or dermic arts either. Therefore, he rarely used it. He had tried to repair the bronze square tripod before as well. Although the bronze square tripod was filled with cracks and was almost smashed into pieces, it was still incomparably tough and invulnerable to fire, water, and could not be repaired. But now that it endured the baptism of the 4 of 9 heavenly tribulation, the bronze square tripod was infused with a lot of heaven and earth essence Qi as well. There was finally a reaction from the tripod. A faint light shone from the crack of the tripod. The dragon phoenix true body stared fixedly at the bronze square tripod and observed it carefully, gradually discovering something unusual. There seemed to be 4 patterns etched on the outer walls of the bronze square tripod. However, the tripod was severely shattered and Su Zimo could not tell what patterns were etched on the walls. The green lotus true body that was not far away from the dragon phoenix true body was looking down with a hint of shock in his eyes. He was getting further and further away from Tianhuang mainland. In his vision, Tianhuang mainland became smaller and smaller, gradually turning into a spot of light. At that moment, Su Zimo looked down and saw that there were millions of such spots of light in the vast universe below, countless like a river of sand. These spots of light must be the billion minor kiliocosms. Su Zimo thought to himself. It was these endless minor kiliocosms that formed the entire lower world. Tianhuang mainland was merely a speck of sand in the vast river of sand. It was tiny and insignificant compared to the entire lower world. It was only now that Su Zimo truly understood what the human emperor had said to him. In the upper world, there were countless paragons and monster incarnates. Emperors of the lower world ascended and most of them became ordinary people in the upper world. There's a saying in the Buddhist sutras that there's a world in a sand. Could this billion minor kiliocosms really be a handful of gravel left behind by some big shot? Su Zimo's imagination ran wild. Right then, a gigantic shadow swept past him. Shocked, Su Zimo turned over. Through the milky white beam of light, Su Zimo could clearly see that the gigantic shadow was an incomparably massive star. The surface of the star was uneven with mountains and ravines. Wild winds howled and sand and rocks flew without any signs of life. However, that star still emitted an extremely vast power, as though it could devour all living beings. In the face of that star, Su Zimo was like a speck of dust. Those were true stars. In Tianhuang mainland, all living beings looked up at the starry skies. Right now, Su Zimo was truly beside a star. Su Zimo's gaze continued to extend. In the vast void, there were countless stars and celestial bodies floating. Some of them were circular stars while others looked like floating continents. He could even sense signs of life from some of the celestial bodies. In fact, many strange living beings even ran out from some of the continents and looked at Su Zimo, who was ascending curiously. The entire world and the massive universe were extremely vast. There were countless living beings and races of all shapes and sizes. All of them had different legends in their respective worlds. Su Zimo was only one of them. Right then, the milky white beam of light on the dragon phoenix true body suddenly shifted and flew in a direction. As for the green lotus true body, he flew in another direction as though he was pulled by an inexplicable gravity. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Daiyu had once said that the dragon phoenix true body had the highest chance of ascending to one of the three worlds, the dragon, parasol tree, or great wilderness. The green lotus true body could ascend to the heavenly world. The current scene should be a sign that the two true bodies had ascended to two different worlds. Su Zimo had a calm expression. He could only allow himself to be drawn in by that power and could not do anything about it. He could not choose which world he wanted to ascend to. Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, as though something terrifying was about to descend on him. His expression changed. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never felt such a terrifying sense of trepidation. Back when he was at the Void Reversion Realm, he was hunted by experts of the half-martial ancestor. Even against such strong foes, there was never such a huge reaction. Suddenly, an unimaginable might descended. Against that might, the milky white beams of light that enveloped the two true bodies cracked and let out a jarring sound. Boom! Immediately after, a loud bang sounded above Su Zimo's head. Instinctively, he looked up. A gigantic palm enveloped his two true bodies. Su Zimo's pupils constricted violently. The terror of that palm had already surpassed his imagination. The stars that floated beside him earlier on were as tiny as gravel against that palm. Boom! 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 Before the palm descended, many stars and celestial bodies in the surrounding void shattered and turned into ashes. The living beings in those stars and celestial bodies could not resist at all and were killed in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1784, King Yunyu. Chapter 1784, King Yunyu. A single palm could destroy many stars and celestial bodies with ease. That power was completely beyond Su Zimo's understanding. The cruelty behind it made Su Zimo's heart turn cold. In the eyes of the owner of the palm, the lives of the living beings on the stars were like grass and were killed without hesitation. However, that palm was clearly aimed at him. Su Zimo truly could not imagine how he had attracted such a terrifying enemy before he even ascended to the upper world. More than that, he had not expected to encounter such a calamity when he was ascending. In other words, this person had even predicted his ascension and arrived a step earlier to kill him. This person knew very well that he might not be able to kill Su Zimo if the latter were to ascend to another world. Su Zimo's eyes widened. He could not move at all against the aura released by the gigantic hand. Before the terrifying palm descended, the aura and pressure released by it was enough to restrict Su Zimo completely. Su Zimo felt a sense of helplessness. That was an absolute suppression through strength. Even when he faced the experts of the upper world back then, he did not feel this way. Fufufu. Suddenly, a cold laughter sounded from the starry skies. "Aunt, we meet again." The voice sounded once more. Su Zimo was shocked. That voice sounded familiar. It's that person. A figure flashed through Su Zimo's mind and his heart sank. Back then, experts of the upper world descended upon Tianhuang mainland one after another. In the end, a white-robed man who referred to himself as a king appeared. In fact, he could locate the existence of the Green Lotus true body in Tianhuang mainland with a single thought and was extremely powerful. Furthermore, he learned from Daiyu that what descended on Tianhuang mainland was only a clone of the white-robed man. Daiyu had once told Su Zimo that this person had a high status in the heavenly world and was a king who could rule over an entire area. Unfortunately, that person met Daiyu and his clone was destroyed. Furthermore, Daiyu snatched away his Dao fruit. Right now, the Dao fruit was in the hands of the martial Dao prime body. Daiyu had once told Su Zimo to be careful of this person if he ascended to the heavenly world. However, Su Zimo had not expected that this person would attack him before he could ascend to the upper world. "I don't care what your relationship with that blood butterfly is. Since she destroyed one of my clones, I'll make you pay for it." The white-robed man's voice sounded once more, his tone cold and filled with resentment. Su Zimo knew in his heart that the white-robed man was not only here for revenge, but also for his Green Lotus true body. Indeed, the white-robed man said coldly, "Initially, I intended to raise your Dragon Phoenix clone as an immortal pet. However, since my clone was destroyed, your clone will have to die with me. Don't worry, I won't kill your Green Lotus true body immediately. I still want to refine your true body into immortal herbs and elixirs to cultivate." The moment he said that, the gigantic palm closed slowly. A terrifying pressure descended on the Dragon Phoenix true body instantly. Crack! 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 The sound of bones cracking could be heard from the Dragon Phoenix true body. It was an endless pain that seeped into his soul. The Dragon Phoenix true body could not move at all. Against that power, his bones shattered bit by bit and his life force was destroyed. During this process, although the Dragon Phoenix essence spirit could not move, the situation was incomparably terrible as it felt the pain from various parts of its body. Under the immense pressure, the Dragon Phoenix true body had already begun to transform and distort. Given the white-robed man's methods, he could probably crush the Dragon Phoenix true body with a single finger. But now, the white-robed man was slowly destroying the Dragon Phoenix true body to torture Su Zimo. He wanted Su Zimo to experience that pain and despair personally. The scales of the Dragon Phoenix true body had already turned into dust. In a short dozens of breaths, the bones of the Dragon Phoenix true body were completely crushed by that terrifying power. For the Dragon Phoenix true body, those dozens of breaths seemed like hundreds of years had passed. The Dragon Phoenix true body wanted to vent but could not and could only endure the pain silently. Before long, the destructive pressure seeped into the organs of the Dragon Phoenix true body. Even his scales, flesh and bones could not withstand that power. In the blink of an eye, the organs of the Dragon Phoenix true body were crushed into pieces without any life. The Dragon Phoenix true body was covered in blood and was already unrecognizable. He was almost squeezed into a blood-colored meatball by the powerful force. Fufufu. The white-robed man's laughter continued. He seemed to be very satisfied with his masterpiece. That's the bloodline of the Dragon Phoenix. It would be a pity. Suddenly, another voice sounded in the starry skies. He's just a beast that ascended from the lower world. There's nothing to pity. This humanoid creation Green Lotus is the true utmost treasure. The white-robed man replied. Although Su Zimo's vision was completely blocked by the gigantic hand above his head, it was clear that there was someone else in the starry skies apart from the white-robed man. Suddenly, the voice exclaimed softly, "This tripod can actually defend against your power and isn't completely crippled yet?" What lousy tripod is that? Why is it shattered to such an extent? The white-robed man added, seemingly puzzled as well. Right then, another domineering power burst forth from the starry skies and struck the white-robed man's palm. Boom! The two powers collided with a loud bang and the surrounding starry skies trembled slightly. King Yunyu, as an immortal king, you're actually so despicable as to interfere with the ascension of living beings from the lower worlds. Immediately after, a woman's shout sounded from the starry skies. Humph! The white-robed man harumphed coldly. Where did this crazy woman come from? You're not qualified to comment on my actions. You can't stop me either. Although that was the case, Su Zimo felt his body lighten when the woman interfered and fought against King Yunyu. Although the suffocating aura of death was still lingering around him, he was temporarily freed from his imprisoned state and could move again. Without hesitation, the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit broke free from the battered Dragon Phoenix True Body and hid in the bronze square tripod, speeding towards the green Lotus True Body. The body of the Dragon Phoenix True Body had already lost its life force and was completely severed from the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit. There was no need to heal it. Blood Rebirth. The Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit hid in the bronze square tripod and channeled its divine powers hurriedly, wanting to reconstruct its body. However, the divine power dissipated the moment it was released. There was no flesh around the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit. When he noticed that, Su Zimo's expression turned cold and his heart sank. Chapter 1785, Spirit and Flesh Separation. Chapter 1785, Spirit and Flesh Separation. Humph. As though he sensed Su Zimo's intentions, King Yunyu could not help but sneer. As expected of a frog in the well. How ignorant. You still want to release that blood rebirth technique after leaving your inferior lower world? I said that I'm going to destroy one of your clones. Your clone will definitely be crippled and no one will be able to save you. In that short period of time, the battered and exhausted Dragon Phoenix True Body had already fallen. Su Zimo had not expected to encounter such a calamity before he even ascended to the upper world. He had not expected that his blood rebirth would be useless in these boundless starry skies. Su Zimo's expression was dark and his gaze was cold. At that moment, the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit had just arrived beside him with the bronze square tripod. The bronze square tripod was his only hope of survival. Although, even that was a slim chance in these starry skies against such a great enemy. Su Zimo looked at the gradually disappearing Dragon Phoenix True Body and his mind raced as he thought of countermeasures. This Dragon Phoenix True Body had cultivated for so many years and was transformed from his initial mortal body. Was he going to give up just like that? However, what could he do if he did not give up? The life force of this Dragon Phoenix True Body had already been destroyed by the King Yunyu and there was no chance of him reviving. If he wanted to use blood rebirth, the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit would have to return to the lower world and Tianhuang mainland. However, he had already ascended through the Tribulation Transcendence and left the lower world. If he returned now, he would be stopped by the laws of the lower world. Daiyu mended the heavens and the laws were complete. There was no way the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit could return to Tianhuang mainland. Furthermore, the prerequisite of blood rebirth was that one had to possess a drop of bloodline with life force. As for the bloodline life force of the Dragon Phoenix True Body, it was completely destroyed by King Yunyu. Even if the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit returned to the lower world, it would be useless. In a flash, Su Zimo's eyes flashed coldly and he made up his mind. Abandon the Dragon Phoenix True Body. Abandoning it did not mean that the Dragon Phoenix True Body would disappear. The dilapidated Dragon Phoenix True Body had no life force and would fall back to Tianhuang mainland along the original path under the shattered milky white beam of light. The laws of the lower world restricted living beings and everything that possessed life. Things such as the withered creation Lotus platform heaven-slaying sword art, earth-slaying sword art and bronze square tripod would not be restricted by the laws of the lower world. As for the dragon phoenix true body, he would naturally not be stopped after his life force was destroyed by King Yunyu and he fell to Tianhuang mainland. Furthermore, the martial Dao prime body was still in Tianhuang mainland. Su Zimo's decision was to separate his spirit and flesh. Since the dragon phoenix true body could no longer be saved, he would let it return to Tianhuang mainland and pass it to the martial Dao prime body. With the help of the martial Dao furnace, he could refine it and fuse it into his prime body. The martial Dao prime body was originally conjured by the martial Dao fruit and did not have a body of flesh. This time round, if the martial Dao prime body could fuse the dragon phoenix true body, which was Su Zimo's initial body, into his body, he would completely be the prime body. The physical body of the dragon phoenix would be handed to the prime body. As for the dragon phoenix essence spirit, he would leave it to the green lotus true body. Those two essence spirits were cultivated by Su Zimo to begin with and were one. If they could fuse once more, it would mean a lot to Su Zimo. The fusion of the two essence spirits was also an obvious boost to Su Zimo's strength. The most direct thing was definitely the increase in the power of his essence spirit. More importantly, the many divine powers and secret skills comprehended by the dragon phoenix essence spirit would fuse into Su Zimo's body without losing them. This was way too important for Su Zimo. The dragon phoenix true body knew many powerful divine powers and secret skills. If he lost them just like that, it would be an irreparable loss for Su Zimo. However, that would not have happened if his essence spirits could fuse. In other words, if Su Zimo's idea succeeded, although the dragon phoenix true body was destroyed, it would fuse into the body of the martial Dao prime body in green lotus true body and exist in another way. Of course, the prerequisite was that Su Zimo could escape this calamity. Boom! 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 Although the woman who appeared later on did not appear in the starry skies, she fought against King Yunyu and released a violent fluctuation. Humph! King Yunyu sneered, "You want to interfere in my affairs after merely forming a minor grotto heaven? You must have a death wish." Before his sentence was finished, King Yunyu attacked once more. Boom! Boom! The starry skies trembled. In the depths of the starry skies, the woman grunted. During this process, Su Zimo had long hidden in the bronze square tripod with the dragon phoenix essence spirit. He wanted to control the bronze square tripod and escape from this place. However, the energy fluctuation released by the battle outside attacked the bronze square tripod continuously. Su Zimo was completely helpless against that terrifying power. He could only hide in the bronze square tripod and collide everywhere in the chaotic power, scurrying through the nearby starry skies helplessly. Although Su Zimo could not see the situation outside, it was clear that the woman was not a match for King Yunyu. More importantly, King Yunyu was not alone. If anyone else joined forces with King Yunyu, that woman would definitely be defeated. I wonder who that woman is. I hope she's fine. Su Zimo thought to himself. His life and death was no longer up to him and he could only leave it up to fate. Right now, Su Zimo merely hoped that this woman would not be implicated because of him. The aura outside was getting more berserk. Su Zimo threw out the 9 heavens living soil and a ball of yellow sand sealed the mouth of the tripod as he curled his body within. He took a deep breath of air and with a single thought, the dragon phoenix essence spirit entered the consciousness of the green lotus true body. One of them had shoulder-length scarlet hair and was filled with demonic chi while the other had elegant black hair that was ethereal. Gritting his teeth, Su Zimo controlled his mind and the two essence spirits collided. The two human figures fused and released a violent spirit consciousness fluctuation. Ugh! As though he was struck by lightning, Su Zimo shuddered and grunted. His vision darkened and he almost fainted. Initially, He thought that he shouldn't encounter much resistance fusing the two essence spirits since they came from the same origin. However, in reality, the forceful fusion of the two essence spirits still resulted in an intense clash. Neither side gave in and they were almost destroyed on the spot. Actually, if the two essence spirits were fused at their birth, there wouldn't be much danger. But now, the two essence spirits were separate individuals. One of them had already become a taboo dragon phoenix and its demonic chi was torrential. The other was an utmost treasure of the universe that was filled with a resplendent glow. Although the two essence spirits came from the same origin, they were completely different. This fusion was simply courting death. Even King Yunyu and the others who were fighting in the starry skies would not dare to do that, let alone Su Zimo who had just ascended. In reality, if not for the fact that the Dragon Phoenix true body was destroyed and Su Zimo was forced into such a desperate situation, he would not have taken the risk to fuse two essence spirits. But now, he had no other choice. Even if he stopped, both essence spirits had already suffered immense damage that could not be salvaged. He could only rely on his powerful will to try his best to maintain his clarity and fuse forcefully. Su Zimo did not realize that his current actions were already half a step into the gates of hell. If he did not stop, the two essence spirits would not fuse. Instead, they would die together and their souls would dissipate. Chapter 1786, Illumination Nether Glow. Chapter 1786, Illumination Nether Glow. The battle outside the bronze square tripod was getting more intense and the mysterious woman that appeared later was clearly not a match for King Yunyu. The surrounding starry skies trembled in the collision of the two experts, as though they could not withstand the impact of the power. If the mysterious woman was defeated, Su Zimo would definitely die as well. But now, Su Zimo was also facing immense danger within the bronze square tripod. The Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit and Green Lotus Essence Spirit were irreconcilable and intertwined. Although the two Essence Spirits came from the same origin, they had already undergone a complete transformation up till this point of their cultivation. The forceful fusion caused an intense conflict to break out. Curled up, Su Zimo hugged his head with both hands and growled from the bronze square tripod. A sharp pain shot through his mind and seeped into his bones. He felt as though his head was about to explode. Su Zimo's features were contorted and green veins popped out on his neck. His aura was intermittently weak and strong, fluctuating as though he could die at any moment. In the process, his consciousness had long turned blurry. If not for his strong willpower and unshakable Tao heart, he would have fainted from the impact of the pain. At that moment, the two essence spirits had already fused but the scarlet and green lights did not relent, illuminating one another. Even if Su Zimo wanted to separate the two essence spirits, he could no longer do it. As time passed by, the conflict between the two essence spirits intensified. Dong! 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 The sharp pain in his mind almost caused Su Zimo to break down. He clenched his fists and smashed the inner wall of the bronze square tripod repeatedly with dull thuds. Su Zimo released all his strength and hammered the walls of the tripod wildly. In fact, he did not even notice that his fist was dripping with blood. The pain on his body was not even a fraction of the pain caused by the fusion of his essence spirit in his mind. Su Zimo let out a deep growl from the depths of his throat and his consciousness was blurry. He scratched around wildly and his fingernails broke as they crossed the cracks of the tripod. In the blink of an eye, his fingers were mangled. Fingers were connected to the heart and the pain finally eased the situation slightly. Even so, the pain in his mind surged like a tide and struck Su Zimo's spirit. Su Zimo closed his eyes tightly with a pained expression and continued grabbing wildly in the dark and cramped bronze square tripod. Suddenly, his fingertip seemed to have accidentally touched a hard stone in a corner of the bronze square tripod. Immediately after, he felt a sharp pain in his mind. The stone seemed to have entered his body through his finger and entered his mind. It was a familiar feeling. It seemed like, ah. Suddenly, Su Zimo howled and opened his eyes. It was as though a pitch-black stone had appeared in his left eye. In a flash, his entire left eye had turned pitch black. However, his right eye had turned completely white. It was like a blazing sun that was embedded in his right eye, emitting a blinding light that illuminated the dark bronze square tripod like daylight. A dark and deep light emanated from Su Zimo's left eye as well, as though it wanted to devour everything. At that moment, Su Zimo regained his senses. It's the Illumination Stone. Su Zimo thought to himself. Earlier on, apart from the bronze square tripod, the Illumination Stone was the only thing that was intact against the attack of King Yunyu. The dragon phoenix true body was destroyed and his flesh, tendons, bones and organs were shattered. The Illumination Stone was also squeezed out by the power and fell into the bronze square tripod. Even the dragon phoenix essence spirit did not notice it. To think that by some freak coincidence, the Illumination Stone would also enter the green Lotus true body and fuse with his right eye. Illumination and Nether glow had immense backgrounds and were definitely not items from the lower world. Illumination contained the unyielding power of extreme yang. Nether glow contained the cold and dark power of extreme yin. Back in Tianhuang mainland, when he fought against the emperors of the primordial races, Su Zimo's two true bodies released two visual techniques that transformed into yin-yang fishes that bit one another. Under the entanglement of the yin-yang fishes, the Thousand-Eye Emperor's supreme divine power dissipated before it could truly form. However, the power of the yin-yang fishes continued to rise and was even out of his control. Su Zimo hurriedly severed one of the powers to break the pursuit of the yin-yang fishes and disperse the terrifying power. Even so, blood flowed out of Su Zimo's eyes at that time. If he did not stop in time, Su Zimo might have been destroyed by the pursuit of the yin-yang fishes. But now that the Illumination and Nether glow were gathered in a single body, the yin-yang fishes had reappeared. However, the yin-yang fishes this time round did not appear outside. The Illumination Stone was in the Dragon Phoenix True Body's body all year round and was connected by bloodline. The power of Extreme Yang fused with the Dragon Phoenix Essence Spirit. The power of Extreme Yin of the Nether Glow Stone fused with the Green Lotus Essence Spirit. Initially, the two Essence Spirits were in an intense conflict and refused to give in to one another. However, due to the fusion of the powers of Extreme Yin and Yang, they gradually stopped. The two Essence Spirits seemed to have transformed into yin-yang fishes that spun slowly in Su Zimo's consciousness, chasing one another. An extremely terrifying spirit consciousness fluctuation emanated from the bronze square tripod. If King Yunyu and the others could notice this, they would definitely be shocked. That spirit consciousness fluctuation should not have been released by a cultivator who had just ascended after Tribulation Transcendence. The pain in Su Zimo's mind lessened significantly. However, the danger before him was not resolved yet. That was because Su Zimo knew very well that the two powers of extreme yin and yang were in balance right now. However, as the two powers rose, the conflict between the yin-yang fishes would become more intense and they might even bite one another. At that time, the two essence spirits would also be destroyed by the pursuit of the power of yin and yang. What should I do? Su Zimo was anxious. He was helpless against that scene. Right now, the situation in his consciousness was completely out of his control. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a loud bang sounded from outside the bronze square tripod. The two experts attacked and released a shocking collision. The power was so terrifying that it even pierced a part of the starry skies near the bronze square tripod. Cracks appeared around the pierced starry skies. Immediately after, the starry skies began to collapse and a cave appeared. It grew deeper and deeper and was pitch black, as though it wanted to devour all living beings. Black hole. King Yunyu exclaimed, as though he was extremely wary of the black hole. The starry skies could not withstand the attack of two experts, and a change happened. As for the black hole, it was extremely terrifying. Even light would be devoured by it, let alone living beings of the 10,000 races. Even King Yunyu did not dare to enter. Chapter 1787, Words in the Tripod. Chapter 1787, Words in the Tripod. Before Su Zimo could escape from danger within the bronze square tripod, he felt a tremendous suction force acting on it. He had no choice but to fall into the endless abyss. Immediately after, Su Zimo heard King Yunyu's exclamation about the black hole. Black hole? What was that? In Su Zimo's consciousness, his two essence spirits contained the power of extreme yin and yang as they spun slowly. His aura rose continuously and turned increasingly berserk, showing signs of collapse. Su Zimo could no longer think about anything else. His consciousness was in chaos. If not for the fact that the creation Lotus platform was beneath and spewed out streams of green light that surged into the two essence spirits, his soul would have long dissipated. He was faced with troubles both internally and externally. The black hole was a scene that could only be formed in the starry skies of the upper world after many changes. It could devour all living beings, and even immortal kings would not dare to step foot into it. When he saw the bronze square tripod sucked into the black hole in the starry skies, King Yunyu was shocked and furious with a livid expression. He was about to obtain the creation green lotus, but it was sucked into the black hole. Even though he had torrential combat strength, he was helpless at the moment. Swoosh! Right then, a streak of silver light burst forth from one end of the starry skies like a bolt of lightning and entered the black hole instantly. It was a horsetail whip. As though it was sentient, the silver threads on the horsetail whip were extremely extraordinary. They charged into the black hole in the starry sky and reached towards the bronze square tripod, wanting to sweep it out. The person who attacked was not King Yunyu, but the other person. Prior to this person did not attack when King Yunyu fought the mysterious woman. However, at that moment, when he saw that the creation green lotus was about to be devoured by the black hole, he finally could not hold it in and summoned a dermic treasure. However, the silver threads on the horsetail whip dimmed the moment they entered the black hole. By the time the silver threads arrived above the bronze square tripod, they were already at the end of the road and were torn apart by the power of the black hole. In the blink of an eye, the silver threads turned into dust. In that short period of time, the bronze square tripod had already disappeared into the depths of the black hole. Sigh. When the mysterious woman saw that, she sighed and retreated. King Yunyu's face was filled with killing intent. Just as he was about to chase after her, a voice sounded from the side, "Don't go. Although your combat strength is stronger than hers, you won't be able to catch up to her." Who was that woman? King Yunyu's expression darkened. That woman seems to be shrouded by a fog and her appearance can't be seen clearly. Can you tell who she is? On the other end of the starry skies, a figure appeared faintly with a bare horsetail whip in his hands. It was the person who wanted to retrieve the bronze square tripod earlier on. I can't tell. The person said, however, there should be very few kings in the heavenly world who can possess such methods. Damn it! King Yunyu had an indignant expression and said hatefully, I came in a group just to only destroy a clone of this lad? The person seemed a little indignant as well and harumphed coldly. Not only did I gain nothing by coming with you, I even lost a grotto heaven dermic treasure. My horsetail whip has been nurtured for hundreds of thousands of years. To think that it would be destroyed in this black hole today. Suddenly, King Yunyu said, however, both of us were wrong. That battered bronze tripod is a rare treasure. That's right. The person nodded slightly. My horsetail whip was torn by the black hole in the starry skies. However, although that bronze tripod was filled with cracks, it was not completely shattered. It's clear that it has a powerful background. However, it's meaningless to talk about that now. There's no way to retrieve the bronze tripod that fell into the black hole of the starry skies. With that said, the figure gradually faded and disappeared into the depths of the starry skies. King Yunyu stood on the spot and looked at the black hole not far away. After standing for a long time, although he was indignant, he could only leave helplessly. There was no time or light in the black hole. The space within was distorted and anything that fell into it would be torn into pieces by the power of the black hole. Even if there were any utmost treasures that could defend against the power of the black hole, there was no way they could leave this place. The black hole was like an endless dark ocean. At that moment, a battered bronze square tripod floated in the ocean. Under normal circumstances, there should be no light in a black hole filled with darkness. But now, the bronze square tripod was emitting a faint glow. Furthermore, as time passed by, the light emitted by the bronze square tripod intensified. A strange change was happening within the bronze square tripod. When the silver threads of the horsetail whip were shredded by the black hole and turned into silver dust, they should have scattered into the black hole. However, the strange thing was that a powerful suction force burst forth from the bronze square tripod and sucked all the silver dust over. The silver dust passed through the 9 heavens living soil and fell into the bronze square tripod. Although Su Zimo's consciousness was in a mess, he could still sense that scene. Immediately after, he could sense that the bronze square tripod was boiling. Although the heat did not hurt Su Zimo, it smelted all the silver dust and emanated an extremely powerful aura. While the silver dust was shattered, it was a grotto heaven-dermic treasure. Be it its material or the power it contained, it was extremely shocking. At that moment, the bronze square tripod began to absorb the power of the silver dust on its own after smelting it. The bronze square tripod was like a starving person, gulping in huge mouthfuls. There were 4 sides to the bronze square tripod. In the process, the crack on the inner walls of the bronze square tripod healed bit by bit. Initially, after the baptism of the heavenly tribulation and absorbing the heaven and earth essence chi, the bronze square tripod had already undergone some changes, it had already reacted by emitting a faint glow. However, the tripod was still battered and showed no signs of recovery. But now, the bronze square tripod was recovering on its own after devouring and refining the silver dust. Su Zimo was delighted when he noticed that. Right then, another violent impact sounded in his mind. As though he was struck by lightning, Su Zimo's face turned pale and he nearly fainted. In his consciousness, the chase between the 2 essence spirits intensified and he could no longer withstand it. If he could not think of a solution, his 2 essence spirits would collapse completely and his soul would dissipate. Ah! 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 Su Zimo clenched his fists and growled with a pained expression. Suddenly, a golden light seemed to flash before Su Zimo's eyes. He looked over with widened eyes. As the cracks on one side of the bronze square tripod healed, lines of words appeared on one of the inner walls, shimmering with a faint golden light. Under the connection of the golden thread, the yin-yang fishes fused almost perfectly and spun slowly while their auras gradually stabilized. Su Zimo panted heavily, drenched from head to toe. However, his eyes shone with the joy of surviving a calamity. Even after absorbing the weapon of the Immortal King Expert, only a single wall of the bronze square tripod was repaired. However, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra recorded on the wall of the tripod was incomplete and could only be considered as one of the volumes. If those Sanskrit words could not suppress the extreme yin and yang as well as his 2 essence spirits, he would be helpless. At that moment, the black and white yin-yang fishes spun slowly on the creation Lotus platform, absorbing the green glow that spewed from it and emitting a powerful aura. As time passed by, the yin-yang fishes gradually transformed and condensed another essence spirit. It looked exactly like Su Zimo. Success. Su Zimo was delighted. The two essence spirits fused successfully. Not only that, Su Zimo could clearly sense that the brand new essence spirit was much stronger than his current cultivation realm. What surprised Su Zimo even more was that his essence spirit was not only nourished by the creation Lotus platform. The two Illumination and Nether glow stones that had fused into his eyes were also emitting wisps of power that were nourishing his essence spirit. That way, the potential of the green Lotus essence spirit would be limitless and there would be a greater chance for it to grow to grade 10, 11, or even the legendary grade 12. Daiyu had once said that the later 4 grades of the creation Green Lotus contained great opportunities. Now that Su Zimo's Green Lotus true body had transformed to grade 9, that statement had come true. He obtained an utmost treasure, the 9 heavens living soil. He did not know what sort of opportunities would be born in the later 3 grades. This time round, Su Zimo had no other choice than to fuse his essence spirits. This was the only way he could minimize the loss of this calamity. Notwithstanding the huge increase in his essence spirit realm after the essence spirit fusion, by some freak coincidence, he even activated the bronze square tripod completely and obtained an ancient Buddhist sutra from it. It was clear that this Buddhist sutra had an extremely powerful effect on cultivating one's essence spirit. If that was not the case, he would not have been able to fuse his 2 essence spirits through the intersection of yin and yang. More importantly, the reverse scale and barren secret skills in the dragon phoenix essence spirit were not lost and were completely fused with the green lotus true body. After fusing with his essence spirit, the combat strength of the green lotus true body increased significantly as well. For his ascension to the upper world, this was way too important. He had already encountered such a calamity before he ascended to the upper world. It was hard to imagine the danger he would face once he truly arrived. Of course, the fusion of the 2 essence spirits was not without losses. At the very least, the current green lotus true body could no longer release the Nirvana divine power of the Phoenix race. Apart from comprehension, the most important thing to activate this innate divine power was to possess the blood of the divine Phoenix. The dragon Phoenix true body had Phoenix blood flowing through his body, but the green lotus true body did not. For Su Zimo, that loss was nothing much. Even if he could activate that divine power, he would not dare to. That was because the Nirvana divine power had a slim chance of survival to begin with. Relying on that divine power would not be of much benefit to his cultivation. King Yunyu. Once I ascend to the upper world, I'll definitely take revenge. In the bronze square tripod, Su Zimo could not help but say word by word with a cold expression and killing intent when he thought of the destroyed dragon Phoenix true body. Su Zimo did not know that although his essence spirit was temporarily out of danger, he was not out of the woods just yet. Now that he was devoured by the black hole in the starry skies, he was in a space without light, time and essence chi, he could not leave at all, let alone ascend to the upper world. If nothing unexpected happened, he would have to float in the black hole forever until his lifespan was up. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.